Lupin III Part 3 was the next animated series after Part 2, aired from the 3rd of March 1984 to the 25th of December 1985. The series was once again and always will be animated by TMS, but was broadcasted by Yomiuri Television, returning to do so after broadcasting Part 1 as Part 2 was broadcasted by Nippon Television. Part 3 is known as the Pink Jacket series and the only series to primarily feature the thief in this gaudy colour. Oh, and the series has 50 episodes to its name, thank goodness for that! But before we get to part 3, here's a review of the failed pilot that would have brought the Lupin III franchise to the West much earlier. Lupin VIII was going to be an animated series produced in 1982 by TMS alongside Dick Entertainment, a French animation company catered to producing Western animated content for children. The idea was to bring Lupin III to Western countries, at least other than Italy, France and a few others. Considering there was a possibility to sell this to an American or even UK audience, especially to children since animation was always directly geared towards that demographic in those territories, this meant having to water down many of its adult aspects of the series to the point where it would barely even resemble the original series, at least to some extent. For example, Lupin in this series is a detective rather than a thief. Jigen is armed with a space laser and sucks on lollipops instead of smoking cigarettes. Fujiko is far less sensual and sexualized in character and design, but still trying to trick people into getting valuables off them with varying results. And Goemon has a laser sword and can use a hologram to PG-13 slice and dice. Oh, and it would be set in the future because sci-fi was very popular back then thanks to the likes of Star Wars, E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, etc. So it would be a futuristic detective series where Lupin and the gang solve mysteries rather than stealing valuables, though said valuables may be involved from time to time. But wait, what about Pops? Well, he's here, though he thinks Lupin is still the criminal his ancestors were. The Senigata timeline is so blooming cursed, isn't it? I managed to watch the first episode, though there's no voice acting, but there are music, sound effects, and English subtitles encoded onto the video. The same with the Japanese RAWs. The first episode, titled A Man from the Past, has a girl named Alice asking Lupin and Jigen to find her great-grandfather, Willie Dream, who currently resides in a hibernation pod, sleeping for 100 years and via a makeup box, asked to be awakened after said number of years, though his whereabouts are unknown. Lupin and Jigen accept the job and begin their search, and thanks to a map of his whereabouts via said makeup box, Willie's location is in the catacombs in Paris. But once the boys find the pod, it's taken away by the episode's antagonist, Gordon. It turns out that Willie was a thief who many years ago stole $10 billion worth of diamonds, teaming up with Gordon's grandfather to do so. However, Willie ran off with the diamonds, hiding it someplace else and betraying Gordon's grandfather in the process. So Gordon forces the location of the diamonds out of Willie, which is on the moon. So I'm not gonna lie, it does have the vibe of a generic Lupin III episode, though a bit more family friendly, though there are some dialogue that would have been changed for the West, like the removal of damn, there's a picture of beer that would have been changed or removed, but it's relatively harmless. The animation is pretty good, impressive given much of the 80s Western animation with their low budgets. Can't say anything about the voice actors, though despite being kids, I still have the Pioneer cast in my head, so there you go. But overall, it's fine, though the ideas it has for the series had serious potential, but then you realise that people would have disregarded its Japanese origins. Heck, we could have lived in a different timeline that I don't even want to think about. Or could I? The main reason the series was cancelled was due to the LeBlanc estate putting a stop to the production. This was because whilst the Arsène Lupin name was public domain in Japan and possibly Italy, it wasn't so for other countries. The estate would allow Dick and TMS to produce the series, but demanded huge sums of money for the usage of the Lupin name, and since both companies wouldn't pay up, they couldn't produce the series and thus, Lupin VIII was cancelled. All that's left was a fully animated pilot with no voice acting, partially animated segments of other episodes that were in production being released, and a tie-in manga with 6 of the 7 chapters being released via tankobon and being fan-translated by Oranges, with the last 4 being sadly lost. I know I could talk more about this cancelled project, but I want to work on the part 3 video as soon as possible. In fact, this was going to be part of the part 3 video, but I feel it's better to just give it its own short video, so you're not left with nothing this Christmas. The part 3 video will be released when it's done, a 2024 release to be exact. So after that failed stint, they decided to go back to basics and make a third part for Japan only, and a couple of European countries like Italy and much later Spain. Yuzo Oki, who did some work on part 1 and especially part 2, was not only hired to do character designs, but would be the animation director for this series. Oki's idea for part 3 was clear: Lupin in the 80s, at a time when that decade was starting to form its own identity. But not just that, the series would take more influence from the man who created Lupin III, Kazuhiko Kato, better known as Monkey Punch. When Oki got the job as a character designer, he began studying Kato's art, from understanding the evolution of his art style over time to figuring out what style could fit for an animated series, as well as what Oki's interpretation could be while still being faithful to Kato's original art. The order from the animation studios was clear. Once the basics were formed, be free to draw the characters how they saw fit, which must have been a fun time for most of the animation studios. When Oki was designing Lupin, there were 3 types he created depending on the tone of an episode: a soft Lupin, a hard Lupin, and a comical Lupin, possibly based on the fact that Kato's Lupin would have majorly different facial expressions and shapes on a whim, even on the same page. Oki wanted the style of her storytelling to be a mix between Masaki Osumi and the duo of Isao Takahata and Hayao Miyazaki. This would allow animators to use different styles accordingly, though the harder Lupin with the cleaner designs were later abandoned, leaving the soft and comical Lupin. And by the way, soft, hard, and comical count for all characters too, although some later episodes on the rare occasion did have harder designs of some characters for absolutely no reason. As the series goes on, the anime would go completely off the wall when it comes to the character designs, becoming much simpler and less intricate. Oftentimes the characters would look more abstract and silly, off-model, and lack logic to how these designs should work in animation, and as you know, this was a deliberate choice by Oki, meaning his philosophy of using Kato's art style sometimes flew in the face of that, though Kato could draw goofier depictions of characters for comedic purposes. So it is slightly faithful, but I felt like the addition to a harder Lupin throughout the second season of the series could have made the art style a bit more faithful to the original manga series. In terms of the main characters and how I saw them after watching part 3, Lupin is more or less similar to part 2 but with a bit of an edge, though not to the extent of manga Lupin, and some of you manga readers like me know why. Jigen got the biggest change as he's more relaxed and mellowed out, only getting serious when the plot demands it. Goemon is a bit more faithful to the manga, though admittedly, that's not entirely a good thing as he doesn't have much of a presence unlike part 2, and he's often so bland you completely forget he's in a particular episode, oftentimes relegated to being the Deus Ex Machina. Fujiko for the most part has changed a bit from part 2 in terms of character design, and will continue to change by the series' end. Personality wise, she hasn't changed much, and playing 5D chess against Lupin and any other character of the week she interacts with, successful or not. This is something she's done in part 2, but more emphasis is put towards that in this part, in addition to being the damsel in distress far more often than in the previous part. And Inspector Zenigata, nicknamed Pops, is more downplayed in the silly factor, though his unnatural dedication to capturing Lupin remains. I'll talk more about how I feel about the series overall near the end, and maybe during some of the reviews, but for now, let's jump right into said reviews and how the episodes rank overall. Please remember, this is my own personal ranking. You may agree or disagree with me, you may enjoy an episode I don't particularly like and vice versa. How I feel about the series altogether may be different from yours. Like I said in my part 2 rankings, you might have a ranking list different from mine, and that's fine. We all have different opinions when it comes to Lupin III, so it would be fun to see what others like and dislike. Now if you watch my part 2 rankings video, or the series of videos that led to the compiled version, check them out. Start with season 1, as the intro will have a set of rules I listed. It's highly important that you watch it to avoid any issues like being spoiled, talking about manga chapters, how I name characters including Pops, my sense of humour, etc. If you have done all that and have watched part 2 and part 3, then you're ready. But if you haven't, like one of the rules list, there will be spoilers, so come back after watching part 3. Don't be influenced by my views, make your own. And with that, let's begin. Fujiko calls Lupin about a job in San Francisco that the thief might find intriguing. Many years back, infamous gangster Al Capone accumulated a lot of gold, which he then hid in a secret location. He eventually dies in his villa, but before he left the mortal world, he reveals a clue, a tile. This is one of 5 tiles one must collect in order to discover the location of the gold. Fujiko has 3 of the 5, leaving 2 in the hands of some other gangsters. But before they can do a proper searcher for 2, Pops is back to capture Lupin, only for the thief to be kidnapped by Starmao and Fujigo to be kidnapped by the henchman of Chinese triad boss Jinkai. After some shenanigans, Starmao teams up with Jinkai to find the gold, starting with interrogating Lupin, then later torturing Fujigo for the correct tiles, as the ones they have are fake save for 1. This episode is fine, though it's not as strong of a start to the series when compared to Part 2 Episode 1, the dash-in entrance of Lupin III. On one hand, that's a good thing if you've watched Part 2, like I did, and you know how the series works. Lupin is still a tricky thief who can outsmart anyone, Fujigo is the femme fatale, Jigen shoots things, Goemon cuts things, and Pop still chases Lupin. On the other hand, if Part 3 is where you're starting, not sure why, but you do you, you're not going to care for the other main characters as Lupin and Fujigo get more presence here. In the dash-in entrance of Lupin III, the episode introduces all of the main cast, informing you of who they are, what they can do, what their basic strengths are, and it's able to do that with a simple plot involving an old nemesis from the first episode of the previous part. And whilst that may feel pointless to some, it still manages to be a fun episode. Then again, introducing the main cast in a slow manner isn't a bad idea for other series, and this is fine here, unless you've seen the previous series. But even if you do know how the series works, it's still a pretty average episode. I'm guessing it was made to play safe before we get to the possible good stuff? The antagonists are surprisingly ruthless here. Starmao interrogates Lupin for the location of the tiles. He threatens the thief with almost having his head knocked off by a speeding truck and eventually bad driving. He ain't messing around, though his car door was destroyed by said truck, but it's fixed a scene later, probably found a pain spray between scenes. But it's his interrogation on Fujigo that makes him more ruthless, with the femme fatale falling into a water pit, with Starmao threatening to electrocute her with a device unless she tells Jinkai and Starmao where the real tiles are.
You son of a bitch! Why? Tell me why!
Oh, and Fujigo titties are shown. No censorship here. I mean, there is for this video. And before you cry my sexism, here's Lupin's ass. You're welcome. In fact, Fujigo's shirt getting ripped off to reveal her 2 reasons that she's a favourite female character of classic anime is a possible reference to the 1969 pilot film. Yeah, I still remember that, and since I made that video, TMS released a HD remaster of both the theatrical and TV versions on streaming services. A piece of history is now much cleaner and looks very nice. You may be asking why I didn't mention this in my part 1 video. That's because I wrote the script for the part 1 ranking after writing this, and this is just me updating the script like I always do. The main characters are distinctively similar to part 2 whilst being different enough to stand on their own. Lupin has a pink jacket and comes with a perm because it's the 80s. Jigen still looks similar, only now with a dark blue suit instead of the black he usually wears. Goemon has a fuller volume of hair and a square head, different from the more long thin face he typically has, and Fujigo has much fuller hair than Goemon, though Fujigo does differ from time to time even with some similarities, but you can still tell she's Fujigo one way or another. Other characters look a bit wacky but have some kind of restraint, at least for the time being. In the case of Starmao, if you're an anime nut, you may see a resemblance to another famous character in another series. For those who don't know, he looks like Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop, from his big hairdo to the colour scheme of his suit. Keep in mind that Lupin III was a pretty large influence for Cowboy Bebop, as well as Starmao's voice actor, Norio Wakamoto, voicing Vicious in that series. This episode is an adaptation of 2 Shin Lupin III chapters, 158 Frisco Homelessness and 161 Cable Car Jack respectively. Both chapters are 2 of 10 that are part of the San Francisco story arc. Yep, Lupin had story arcs at one point, and since producing this video, Oranges have translated this entire arc, so I can properly compare the chapters and the episode. Chapter 158 is where Starmao interrogates Lupin in the car as we also see in the anime. John Starmao in the manga is an inspector of the San Francisco Special Investigations Unit, but is also the leader of a criminal organization known as the Secret Seven, who is looking for the same treasure Lupin is. The chapter ends with Starmao punching Lupin with a spiked ring, blinding his left eye, though the next chapter has Lupin tricking Starmao in disguise, resulting in payback by blinding his left eye. In the anime, no eyes are blinded, but blimey, speaking of eyes, Starmao in the manga can look creepy sometimes, especially up close. It's his eyes, they're so tiny with small pupils, and his face should be built for much larger eyes, and every time he stares at me, it's as if he's stealing a piece of my soul. Chapter 161 has Fujigo in the water pit being interrogated by Starmal, though this time, after the electronic device was dropped into the pit, she hangs onto his shoes, and Starmal decides to tie her up from the ceiling, slowly cutting the rope to scare her enough to talk, and I get the feeling that some evil bad guy from a cartoon from the 1930s called and is telling Starmal to stop copying him. Now I won't delve too much more into the manga plot as we would be here all day, and this review on this episode so far has gone long enough as is. I recommend you read the San Francisco arc yourself and see what you think of it. As for me, the arc is much longer than the anime episode, though just because it's longer doesn't mean it's better. It's one of those arcs that went on for way too long and feels a little disjointed in places, with a few chapters that feel like filler, but hey, at least the ending was decent and works in the X-ray eyes aspect. Overall, it's the first episode to a new series, and I'd say it's good enough. With that said, I'll give it a pass for now since it is the first episode, with the hope that later ones get much better as I write these reviews after watching each episode. The idea of criminals trying to hunt down treasure that Lupin wants isn't a new idea, but it's what you do with the idea that matters. Freshen it up a bit to make an episode feel unique in its premise. It's not the first time a Lupin episode has done that, but other than the antagonists, it's almost one of those unique episodes, and I mean almost. It's on the ranking list, but as always, let's hope the next episode is better. We're in France, and the chief of Interpol, Alain Bonaparte, gives Pops the task of protecting gold weighing at a whopping 6 tons. But Lupin finds a way to steal it by using bubbles that can temporarily freeze people for a few seconds. But it's all the time the thief needs. After Pops finds out that the rock has been swapped, he is to go back to Japan in utter failure. However, Lupin discovers that the gold they stole was in fact fake, and that someone else stole the real gold. After Lupin tells Pops this, the inspector travels all through France to find out who took it. This episode is okay, certainly better than the previous one. It's more or less a Pop-centric episode, though it is a weird one. Pops easily gives up here. I'm sure he wouldn't usually do that, even if he failed multiple times, which he has. He only gets back into action because Lupin says so. Speaking of the thief, there's a line he says where he wants Pops to continue chasing him because stealing wouldn't be fun without him. But seriously though, when has the thought of Pops ever stopped Lupin from stealing? So Alain Bonaparte is our antagonist, as he's the one who stole the gold in the first place, and Fujigo's having a fling with him so she can get her share of the gold. Never change, you literal gold digger. Now I was expecting him to betray her like other antagonists in previous series, particularly part 2. But that never happens. He simply tries to escape with the gold and Fujigo, thinking nothing will ever happen to him. Nice to see the episode not using an old trope from part 2. So far. Alan is a very forgettable antagonist. Simply put, he's just a corrupt man working for an organization trying to play 5D chess with Pops and Lupin, which was his big mistake. It never works out when you have Lupin breathing down your neck, especially when you have a valuable he wants. He robbed Lupin out of the real gold, and robbed Pops out of a job out of sheer greed, and it still somehow feels old hat. Oh hey, we do get to see the return of the funds of ICPO, and I'm reminded of part 2 episode 153, Wad of Bills Given from God. I feel the reason for Pops giving up not being an interesting plotline is simply because this is Lupin III. Any major changes to a character will be resolved by the end of the episode. If you know how the series works at this point, you're simply waiting for the inevitable. It's even worse when you realise this is the second episode. Another issue I have is the episode's very mediocre ending. Pops is tricked by Alan again, and gives up again, and it's up to Lupin to find the gold himself. I wanted Pops to figure it out, though I guess Lupin and the boys solved everything neatly so that they can give Pops the motivation to continue the chase. But it wasn't a satisfying way to finish a plot, at least to me. Oh, remember the bubbles? It only gets used once for a thief job and that's about it. Overall, another average episode with an average plot, a mediocre antagonist, and plot points that are average at best. It simply exists, just like the first episode, even if this episode is still slightly better than the first. I'll rank it above the gold ingot summon Lupin. Lupin infiltrates a castle owned by the late Malcolm Hurst in order to find his priceless angel painting collection. However, he has to deal with Hurst's daughter, Flora, who yearns to escape the castle much to the dismay of the thief. After some inappropriate shenanigans I'll explain later, she tells Lupin that she knows the location of the paintings, and if he spends a few days with her, she'll tell him. But they also have to deal with Flora's evil stepmother, Anita, who also want the paintings. This is the best episode of Part 3 so far, but has a similar problem that plagued Part 2, Episode 108, Zantetsuken Sorrow. The first half of the episode starts off decent. Lupin wants nothing to do with this girl, so to scare her away so he can deal with the paintings, at night he paints scary faces all over the room Flora is sleeping in, then proceeds to rip off her nightgown and using his pervert energy to creep her out. We even get to see her titties. Unfortunately for Lupin, she's fearless and it leaves Lupin in the drink. Now, this wouldn't be an issue for me for comedic purposes if it wasn't for one little issue. Flora's Ah shit, Japan's at it again. If the box set never gets released in the UK, we know why. Yeah, it was a facepalm moment, including Flora's interaction with Lupin at the beach. Very creepy indeed. At the very least, Lupin doesn't want to plow the girl. In fact, he never wanted to take her from the castle in the first place. She forced him to. And at least he's only leery towards Fujiko. A relief, because at least she's an adult. Oh, she's there to promise Lupin a backdoor blowout if he collects the paintings. Yeah, that moment really did make a chunk of the first half of the episode a bit awkward to sit through, and it wouldn't have been a problem if she wasn't, you know. But thankfully the second half is so much better. It's a lot more comedic and the friendship between Lupin and Flora is great. The village being thankful for Lupin trying to steal their stuff is hilarious, mostly because Lupin gets confused and awkward about the situation. The village is so poor that having Lupin trying to rob them gives them the attention they probably want. The news of his visit even catches Pop's eyes in his cameo appearance. We also get some more Jigen than usual here, and this is the episode where you realise he's a lot more relaxed and less gruff, and oftentimes more sarcastic than usual, and he's not as angry when Fujiko is discussed, at least so far. This episode is a loose adaptation of Shin Lupin III, Chapter 90, Hell Volunteer. I say loosely because it involves a young woman hanging around with Lupin. She wears a bank robber mask and joins him in one of his capers, and she lays on a bed of flowers. These moments are similar to the anime, but that's about it. Oh wait, the scene where Lupin tries to be creepy towards Flora was adapted from the manga, to the surprise of no one who reads manga Lupin. The ending is surprisingly dark as we find out the reason Flora wanted to spend time with Lupin for 3 days is that she's dying of some kind of illness. And considering she's been hunted down by her stepmother so she can collect the angel paintings for herself, this is Flora basically saying, screw it, let me have some fun with Lupin III, and if I get captured and killed by that bitch of a stepmother, at least I enjoyed my time. And Flora does sadly pass away. No random cure to give the episode a happy ending. She sacrifices herself to save Lupin from being shot by Anita, and the wicked stepmother gets a fiery teleporter to hell. And in the end, Lupin doesn't even take the paintings. He leaves them with Flora, eternally lying on a bed of flowers surrounded by said paintings. And as for Fujiko, Lupin just lost someone he became friends with, and he's not horny at the moment. Hello Angel from Hell is a good episode with an unfortunate moment of jailbait, and for those who did watch this episode, yes I did get vibes of Cagliostro. I was fearing the worst but it never went there. And then it went to a place I didn't want it to go, and now I'm wondering if going there was the better choice. Other than that, it's a fun episode with a dark ending that never felt like whiplash. I like Flora, but she's not going to be a memorable Lupin girl. Nothing about her gives her any unique appeal other than cute anime girl. And we got a boatload of those. So yeah, it had its issues, but it's the best episode we got so far, and I'm ranking it on top. Oh, here's Lupin in his Blue Klux Klan outfit. Ah, that pun was terrible. Lupin and Jigen go underwater to find a sunken pirate ship that contains a ton of Spanish gold. Unfortunately, they're attacked by the henchwomen of female pirate captain Sinbad, who is also out to get the gold, to the point where the thief and gunman have to retreat. The ship is quite difficult to get into as the current waves prevent it from being disturbed. Sinbad's only solution is to kidnap Fujiko and place her in a telepathic machine in order to get information about how Lupin will retrieve the ship and the gold. Basically a truth serum with extra steps. This episode is pretty good, and for once it's mostly all good. Apparently Sinbad is said to be more beautiful than Fujiko. It's the eye patch, isn't it? Lupin is forever a starving man. I guess any woman will do. Like Nova from Part 2 episode 114, The Secret of the Mystery Painting, The First Supper. She's surprisingly a more memorable villain on account of her pirate henchwomen, and the fact that she's a pirate, her eye patch because pirates and stuff, and the fact that she almost had a competent side to her that would have worked for her had she tried not to get into Lupin's underpants. Having Fujiko in the telepathic machine is a neat idea, especially if you want some info from your enemies, and gaining info on Lupin through his gang against their will is quite scary for the thief. Though I will admit, Fujiko trying to fight the machine was quite a tense moment. It's even to the point she's able to telepathically call Lupin for help, for their love is that strong in a very cheesy romantic moment when Lupin does save her. It's cringe for all the right reasons and I couldn't help but... No, it really was cringe, never do that again. Also, I've noticed there have been 3 episodes so far that revolve around gold. Is this going to be a recurring thing? Who knows, too early to think about it anyway. Also, we get some titties, and it's Fujiko's, so it's not awkward. There are moments where they do censor them in a tongue-in-cheek manner, then show them off uncensored in the next scene, so what was the point? This episode is a loose adaptation of Shin Lupin III Chapter 10, Lady Sinbad, or Bikini Pirates in the HourofPoop translations. In this chapter, Lupin already stole the gold, but Sinbad and a henchwoman caught Lupin and dumped him along with Jigen and Goemon in the sea. But it turns out one of the henchwomen was Lupin in disguise and saved the boys along with his imitation. Lupin encounters Sinbad in the nude, offering half of the gold, to which she refuses. One dick joke later, because this is still a Kato manga, the boat splits in 2 and both parties get half the gold. Oh, and Fujiko doesn't make an appearance in this chapter. It's an average one, I don't think a new translation is going to make it better, and whilst I usually pick the manga chapter, the anime adaptation is better for fleshing out Sinbad, and doing a lot more with the plot, as well as the Spanish gold, so well done TMS. Overall, a decent episode. I still prefer Hello Angel from Hell, but it's still better than the first 2 episodes, so the series is indeed getting better, I hope. Great antagonist, decent plot, cringe ending, and Pops is here because Gold and Lupin are involved at the same time. I'll rank it above Break the Big Trap. Lupin and the gang are in South Africa with the goal of finding a sea chart that shows the location of sunken Nazi treasure. Lupin and Jigen meet up with Larsen, a former Nazi SS member who has the map on him. But before Lupin can find a way to get the map, 2 young kids attack the men, with one of the kids, Heine, killing Larsen to avenge the death of their father, Herman Mueller, who of course was killed by Larsen. Lupin enlists Goemon to take the map from the second sibling, Bertha, who stole it and ran away. Goemon attacks her, leaving her with no clothes, and then the samurai realizes that this female-looking character is a female, gets embarrassed, and she manages to escape. He then has to meditate so he doesn't get distracted by the female body, leaving Lupin and Jigen to get the map from the kids and their boss, Otto Jurgens. This man's goal is to take the treasure and do what a lot of Nazis do in Lupin episodes, revive the Third Reich. This episode is a tad mediocre. Lupin faces a Nazi again, and Jurgens is just another antagonist. The kids are there. They don't have anything to make them stand out in the slightest. The Goemon plot point involving him trying not to lose against the Horny doesn't get tied up properly, and Bertha, who I really hope is, you know, kisses him in the end for some bloody reason, and she buggers off with the Vulture. And keep in mind, his name is in the title, and there's not much he does to be worthy of that. Goemon is such a bland character in this part so far. At least I got some good moments with Jigen, as little as I got with him, and the dynamic between the two are great. I like it. I get nothing notable with Goemon. At least in part 2 he had more of a presence there, but maybe this will get better as I go on with the series, who knows. I'll give the episode this. Him meditating surrounded by bikini-clad women was pretty funny. Wait a minute. How the heck did Goemon not realize the female-looking character was a female? Is this man blind? The big highlight though has to go to Lupin facing Jurgens in the final scene, where he tries to outsmart the thief, but Lupin of course, you know the rest. In fact, this scene was an adaptation of Shin Lupin III Chapter 28, which has the same title as the anime episode, Goemon the Peerless. It starts with Goemon slicing a shark in half, making the Asian readers cry because they're hungry, and the Western readers cry because sharks are human killer machines, not food. Anyway, Jurgens in the anime is Tokai in the manga. He's not a Nazi, but he is a bald-headed git. The scenarios in the anime are near one-to-one with the manga. In the anime, Lupin shoots a tranquilizer at a man behind the curtains who was ready to shoot Lupin, so he'll be alive once he slept it off. In the manga, Lupin lobs a knife at that same bloke because this is manga Lupin, and manga Lupin has a kill streak to increase. Last episode I prefer the anime over the manga chapter, but in this instance, it's the complete opposite. Mostly because it's my favourite scene in the anime, and the manga is more or less that favourite scene, but with an art style I adore, so the manga chapter wins. Overall, a pretty lackluster episode. I'm ranking it at the bottom. Oh wait, I completely forgot Fujiko was in this episode. She did her usual thing with the bad guy, she gets betrayed and Lupin saves her. Welcome back, old trope. Jigen reunites with mercenary Galanko, the man who taught the marksman how to use a gun. But before they can share drinks and talk about the good old days, the city is attacked by an opposing army led by General Reptile, who wants to rule the city for his own and take the city's hidden treasure. But where there's treasure, Lupin will be there. And where there's a Lupin, Pops will follow suit by running for a battlefield just to catch the thief because he's an absolute mad lad. And then gets arrested by Reptile's men and sent to jail. Oh, and Fujiko tries to seduce Reptile to get some valuables, and we find out that this man is more of a simp for Fujiko than Alain Bonaparte. This was a really good episode, the best so far. We got a Jigen-centered episode, and what's sad is that it's more Jigen-centric than Goemon's own episode. Again, only time will tell. It's not the first time a Jigen-centric episode revolved around the gang being in the midst of war. There was part 2 episode 129, I Saw the Kindness of a Man's Heart in Jigen for example. Though instead of a woman, there's a man, an old friend Jigen has history with, the man who taught the hitman how a gun works and how to use it. But wait a minute, I thought it was Joe of Spades who taught Jigen how to use a gun. Remember from part 2 episode 84, Leave Revenge to Lupin? Are we already getting continuity errors? Does this even matter in the slightest? Well, it's Lupin III and the answer is always no. We don't get much of and about Galanko other than a little exposition of the past, and that he's currently a leader of the Resistance army trying to take down Reptile and his army. Other than that, we get some good moments like a joke involving Goemon wanting to search for Jigen and Lupin telling him not to be a distraction, realizing he said this to a sword-wielding samurai, and it's something that comes back much later and I thought that was pretty funny. Pops is here and gets a couple of scenes, one of which involves Lupin getting caught and sent to the same prison cell with Pops, with Lupin saying that it's not his first time being in jail with the inspector, a possible reference to part 2 episode 30, The Wind in Morocco is Hot. Overall, I enjoyed this episode more than I thought I would. I recommend this one, and I'll rank it on top. Fujiko is reunited with Garb, a man the femme fatale partnered up with years back. During a robbery, Garb gets gunned down, but Fujiko being Fujiko, runs away with the stolen money and leaves Garb to die. He returns years later for one mission, to kill Fujiko Mine. Lupin and the boys try to stop him, but soon discover that he has the ability to dodge any bullet coming his way and see in the dark. He is now known as the Shinigami Garb, a man who returned from death and cannot be shot, taking his vengeance against Fujiko and still being hurt about being betrayed. Happens to the best of them. This is a fantastic episode. Upon seeing this fellow, I thought it was going to be another assassin episode where he's hunting down Lupin and it would have been the same old shtick once again, but to my surprise, the target wasn't the thief, it was Fujiko. And if you're expecting me to call him a thought destroyer or he's part of the thought patrol, then no. It was funny in the part 2 ranking video, but I don't want to overuse a joke that's a few years old at this point. It's like memes. They're funny for a while, expire fast, and either die or evolve whenever, if ever that happens. It's best to let the joke die in peace. Anyway, what makes this plot great is that Fujiko has always been the way she is. She betrays Lupin many times and the thief will still pine for her, no matter what. Fujiko betrays Garb once and he wants to kill her. I love the idea that Fujiko's betrayal shtick could actually have severe consequences if she's not careful. Now, Garb is quite the interesting character, a criminal like Lupin, but unlike the thief, will gun down innocent people and has a threatening aura whilst never having to physically show it other than dodging bullets. It actually fits his Shinigami persona. Now for those who don't know or haven't read or watched Death Note, Bleach or Soul Eater, in Japan, the Shinigami is a religious figure, a god of death if you will. Think of this figure as the Grim Reaper, so Garb would be referred to as Death Garb. The translation I have titles the episode The Man is Called Death Garb, with the official translation titled The Man Called Death Gurv. Wait, Gurv? What kind of name is Gurv? Bloody official translators.
Oh, that sucks.
Garb, as he should be, is probably the second person that Fujiko partnered up with before Lupin, the first being Poon from part 1 episode 9, A Hitman Sings the Blues. Are there any more from the past? Who knows? Fujiko's past is an absolute blur, and I have no problem with that. It keeps the mystery of this woman interesting, even if her shtick can sometimes get repetitive. But Garb lost the battle against Lupin for one reason. He assumes Lupin will leave her be after being betrayed again. And if you're a fan of this series by this point, you know that this is Lupin. He's been betrayed by Fujiko multiple times, and yet he still comes back for more, hoping one day he will smash Fujiko Puss Puss. The Shinigami Garb underestimated the power of Horny. I like the scene where Garb finds Jigen and it's a very suspenseful moment, because you don't know what he's going to do, all the way until the moment where Jigen battles Garb in a western duel. the second episode in the series to do so because one from the previous episode just wasn't enough. Heck, he can even dodge Goemon's slash attack, nothing can stop him. Oh, and I completely forgot he can see in the dark. Okay, that's kind of ridiculous, not gonna lie. Also, Pops is here, and is chasing Lupin, I'm not sure why. Lupin never stole anything, unless it's something Lupin did before the episode. A great episode overall, probably my favourite assassin episode, and whilst it does have its predictable elements, something that can't be fixed, at least the episode had some unique aspects to make it stand out from the rest. And all you had to do was make someone else in the gang a target. Another recommendation, I'll rank it on top. We're in Alaska and there's a hood-wearing religious cult that worships the statue of the Virgin Mary. Their leader, named Yunkel, warns them that Lupin could take their precious statue at any time and is considered the devil by him. He wants him dead, and the only way to get to him is through Fujiko as they kidnap her and plan to burn her at the stake. Fujiko's getting kidnapped way more than usual. Did I say that before? This episode is very below average. It gets better as the episode goes on, at least in entertainment value. However, the episode is overall kind of stupid in many ways. Add to the fact that Yunkel is an absolute dumb sack of old sacks. First off, Lupin didn't even know about the statue, or the cult, or even the village where the cult resides in. Oh, and Yunkel is a petty thief who tries to steal precious valuables, but Lupin always beats him to it. And by the way, the cult turns out to be a bunch of criminals, possibly hiding from the law. In fact, we get to see some wanted posters in a scene where you'd have to pause it to see a couple of the crooks' faces, giving you a vague clue that, in the end, doesn't mean anything all that interesting. Also, Pops is not here. Again, he's not needed in every episode, just saying. I'll give the episode this. The cult attacking Jigen, Goemon and Fujiko in that house was an entertaining moment. Jigen is gunning down them crooks, Goemon is slicing and dicing, heck even Fujiko gets involved in the slaughter. Whether you think the crooks are dead or not is up to you. This moment is an adaptation of Shin Lupin III chapter 71, Car Deluxe. No, I don't get it either. A bunch of villagers are attacking the house consisting of Goemon and Fujiko. Only in the manga chapter, and in a shocking surprise, Jigen isn't in this chapter. Fujiko just lies there knowing she did something to cause this whole attack to happen, whilst Goemon rips and tears into every criminal villager. Lupin disguises himself to trick the criminals and finds a way to save Goemon and Fujiko and steal a random statue. But not before Lupin spending the night in his underpants covered in snow. That man sure is made of sterner stuff. The manga chapter is the better version on account of the fact that whilst we don't get much context for what happened, whatever the anime did to expand on this story was okay, but the chapter appealed to me more. This episode as a whole, whilst having some fun moments, is needlessly stupid even by Lupin's standards. An average plot, a stupid villain that won and did everything to lose because of how dumb his plan was, but at least there was the battle in the house, that was fun. It's decent, but not one of my favourite episodes. I'll rank it above Goemon the Peerless. Lupin ends up getting athlete's foot, making his feet horribly itchy. Dr. Budweiser tries to treat the thief, taking a piece of Lupin's infected skin to diagnose him. The doctor suggests an ancient flower from Egypt that will cure his condition, but there's only 3 in the world, and 1 is nearby in a museum, so Lupin is off to get it. When Lupin goes to steal it, it turns out to be a trap devised by Pops along with Budweiser, who was working with the inspector the whole time in order to get information on Lupin. But Budweiser is playing double agent as he's also working with Fujiko, who helped get Lupin captured. The doctor's real intention was to collect DNA from Lupin to create a clone, as he's done with these monkeys, and he'll use said clone to steal treasure from all around the world. This episode was pretty good. It's quite goofy, but at least it's a fun one to watch. Lupin having a violent urge to scratch its feet was funny and never overstayed its welcome. I like how he's way more cartoony as a result. You get a ton of facial expressions from him, oftentimes it's to the point where you blink and you'll miss a couple of them. The addition of Pops added to the comedy, and given that the interactions and chases of Lupin and Pops were inspired by Tom and Jerry, we get slapstick violence here. From Pops slamming onto a bridge, staying there for a couple of seconds before landing on the floor, to him later on wearing a suit of armor and a convenient magnet slams him and Budweiser onto it. Speaking of Budweiser, he's the mad scientist who's doing what he does for greed, like a lot of antagonists in this series as well as part 2. Not the most memorable antagonist, but he works well for this episode. And yes, his name is Dr. Budweiser. Except it isn't. He's called Badweiser. He's called Budweiser in the translations I have, but in Japan, his Japanese name is romanticized to Badowarosa. Confusing, I know. Also, we get a Valerian reference, this vibrantly coloured image here. This is the second time we have a Lupin plot that revolves around clones, the first being Mamo in the mystery of, well, Mamo. We get to see Budweiser working on it, but we don't get the full results because I don't think that's what the episode wanted to do, I guess. As always, the second half involving Lupin and the gang tricking Pops and his army into thinking the thief is committing some dangerous deeds was indeed a memorable moment. And of course, this moment was yet another adaptation. This time it's Shin Lupin III, chapter 43, Simultaneous Progression. It's near enough the same plot as in the anime, from the clone sample to tricking Pops with dangerous situations, and then there's Robo Pops, and he's out to shoot you in the bollocks. But there are some differences. The main antagonist in the manga chapter is a crime boss. There's a scientist in the manga as well, but not important to the plot. The anime merges the crime boss and the doctor to make Budweiser. The sample the doctor got from Lupin was skin flakes and saliva in the manga chapter, rather than skin from his foot. The clone was a piece of bacteria in the anime adaptation, but there's a fully formed baby in the manga, which makes it way more freakier now that I think about it. What was Lupin gonna do with that baby? I don't want to know actually. The way Pops assumed the gang escaped was slightly different between the two. In the anime, Pops gets tricked into going to the roof by Lupin, making the inspector think that's where the gang escaped, and he was correct, but wasn't able to catch Lupin. Whereas the manga chapter has Pops hearing the gang escape into the roof, but assumes this was all a trick and goes into the underground tunnel. But it turns out to be a trick as well, as Lupin and the gang did in fact escape from the roof. The way the story is structured is different. Split into two halves, the first half shows Lupin and the gang doing what they need to do to get the clone, whilst the second scene is the same as the first half, but from Pop's perspective, resulting in the punchline in the end. It's a chapter. Not my favourite, but still decent. The anime adaptation wins this one for expanding the concept, and it does it really well. Overall, a good episode. I would have loved to see if Budweiser's clone was a success, but alas, that didn't happen. But what we got was an entertaining episode regardless. I'll rank it above Hello Angel from Hell. Lupin is cooking, Goemon needs more training to slice better, and Jigen is reading the newspaper where he reads a message that says, "You are an idiot!" Rudeness aside, the thief discovers that it's a hidden message from Richie Wido. This man has the diamond that once belonged to Lupin I, and Richie asks Lupin to come to his house, with Pops tagging along to check the diamond in order to confirm that it's legit. Upon discovering that it is, after seeing a holographic image of Lupin I, Richie places a bet with Lupin III. Simply put, steal the diamond within a week, and Richie will rescind his position of ever becoming the president at some business he works at. Should Lupin fail, he has to surrender to Pops and go to jail. This is a very mediocre episode on account of the fact that it's such a familiar premise. You may have heard this one if you've watched past Lupin III episodes. Overconfident rich person challenges Lupin to steal their stuff, but tries to outsmart the thief, but the thief outsmarts them back. It's done many times, and this episode fails to do anything unique with that premise. There's a mini subplot involving Goemon improving his sword skills, which results in him being a deus ex machina of the episode, though admittedly it was more of a payoff than the writer simply giving up and wanting to finish the script as soon as possible, but it does feel like both. Finally, let's talk about a man named Kosogumo, who can phase through walls, and he used that power to steal stuff. Think of him as a male Kitty Pryde. Lupin was going to use him to grab the diamond. See, it's placed in a sphere, and if opened, the room where the diamond is held in would explode, so Kosogumo can phase through the sphere and grab the diamond. But it turns out that the prisoner was in fact Pops in disguise, and the real Kosogumo is locked up in another prison. On one hand, Kosogumo succeeding in grabbing a diamond would have been too easy for the thief. On the other hand, the addition of his character and spending a good amount of time with said character was kind of pointless. So yeah, it's a recycled plot that pretends to do something unique with the premise and fails to be more creative. I'll rank it above the gold ingot summon Lupin. Also, I just realised, if Lupin accidentally broke the sphere, it would explode and destroy Richie's house, and Lupin got the diamond anyway and managed to escape before the sphere broke and the house was destroyed anyway. Richie risked not only his job, but his house on a dumb bet. You are an idiot! Lupin enters the house of a crime boss known as Mama. His goal is to steal Count Dracula's heart in the form of a ruby. He steals it successfully, but Mama was one step ahead as it was a fake, and the real ruby is a ring she wears. Mama has been alive for 300 years, and every 100 years, the Dracula heart ruby bleeds. Mama drinks it and retains her youth for 100 more years. Lupin, of course, couldn't give a toss, as he steals it from right under her titties, and she gets her brainwashed henchmen to chase him and the gang in order to get the ring back. And Fujiko is working with Mama, and you all know why. It's a very simple episode, not the greatest, but still a fun episode that's absurd whilst not being too overbearing, and is aware of how silly the premise is, with an effective opening that gets you invested in the episode. Mama takes on Dracula's personality while surprisingly not being a vampire herself. She can brainwash people to do her bidding, except Lupin for some reason. She's the head of a crime syndicate called the Union, though official English translations simply name it the Syndicate, but we'll go with the Union for accuracy reasons. Anyway, they do crime shit, one of them being assassinations, and one of them is a dummy sucking assassin. Because why not? But Mama is not an entirely new character. She originated in the manga, Shin Lupin III Chapter 9, Union Mama. I won't delve too deep into this chapter since other than some familiar moments, it's an entirely different story. Mama in the manga isn't a 300-year-old woman, but the chapter is funny regardless. Overall is another good episode. The humorous moments and the action was pretty solid for this one, though I wish there were more horror elements given that certain aspects of the supernatural were involved. But what we got is fine, and it's an episode I'd come back to if I wanted to watch some part 3 again. Our rank above telepathy is the Signal of Love. Lupin steals a painting from the Belton Gallery in Paris, but once he gets to his hideout, he finds out that the painting is forged. Lupin somehow knows who painted this fake, a man named George. However, this man is forced to paint fakes against his wishes by Belton himself, who is holding his daughter, Sophie, hostage. Lupin is out to find the real painting whilst rescuing Sophie. Hey, did you like Castle of Cagliostro? Well, here's a Tesco value version of that, with a quarter of said plot, quarter of the budget, and some cleavage. Don't worry, Miyazaki isn't here to kick your teeth in, this is part 3 after all. Yeah, there's some familiarities to that flick here. You got fraudulent valuables, a villain who's behind it all, a young girl who's the damsel in distress, Lupin attempting to rescue the girl but gets defeated in some manner, and Jigen and Goemon not being important to the plot, especially Goemon. I'll give it this, the episode starts dark but gets funnier over time, ending in a chase so dumb that it ends up being entertaining, so at least it didn't rip off everything from Cagliostro. This is the second time fake paintings are mentioned and involving a forger painter. Similar to the plot of part 2 episode 115, Mona Lisa smiles twice, though it's not completely the main focus. Oh, did I forget to mention that Lupin, like Clarice, met Sophie many years back. Sophie really liked the guy as a child, thinking he was a magician, and he even gave her sweets. Whoa, Lupin, what are you doing? Giving children you don't know sweets? That's really suspicious. Hey, was your previous car a white van too? Pops, arrest that man. Heck, even young Lupin here looks shady as heck. Maybe a stranger giving sweets to small children was endearing back then, but that's not the case anymore. Anyway, the comedy in this episode goes up to 11 as the chase between Lupin and George and Bolton and his army is completely bonkers, ending with multiple inflatable Lupins blowing up on their faces. This moment was loosely taken from Shin Lupin III Chapter 2, Lonesome Lupin. The context for that manga being him catching a mystery person, finding out that it was a woman, and because this is manga Lupin, he gives her 2 choices: reveal her trump card, or
non-consensual hokey cokey.
You son of a bitch! Why? Tell me why!
Speaking of manga, some scenes were also adapted from Shin Lupin III Chapter 35 and 36, Red Strange Blood Tide Part 1 and 2 respectively. The plot is different for the most part. Lupin is off to steal some treasure, but that also includes a princess who wants to leave with Lupin because her father, the king Kin Dai-O, won't let her leave the castle, and anyone who even touches his daughter is a dead man. There's also Akaki Chishio, who is Bolton's lackey in the anime, and he has invisible weapons. Oh, and because this is Kato, the manga version looks like a nonce and almost
non-consensual hokey cokey.
The princess after King Kin Dai offers his daughter to marry Akaki, the son of a bitch. The scene in the anime where Lupin tries to rescue the princess but gets cock-blocked by Pops and the twist reveal was taken from the manga, and a newspaper in the manga reveals Pops finding out the truth of who he arrested. But yeah, this episode was fun, over the top but does it right. It's not really that perfect, it tries to do Cagliostro in the style of part 3 and it's just weird. But the episode was entertaining and that's all that matters to me. I'll rank it above Copy Humans Are Expensive. Pops chases Lupin and cartoony shenanigans happen. Lupin escapes thanks to the boys, but the thief is absolutely knackered the following morning. Fujiko offers Lupin a job, and despite the thief unable to even move much, he goes anyway to the confusion of Jigen and Goemon. Fujiko takes Lupin to a castle where a women's only party is being held by secret arms dealer Madame Louisa. With Lupin being forced into drag once more, see part 2 episode 42, Lupin becomes a bride if you haven't already. And then the castle launches into space. Just go with it. And then it lands back on Earth and it flies over an ongoing war that Louisa helped fund. And then 2 fighter planes attack the castle, and then Lupin, still in drag, tricks the women into giving them their jewels. When they land, the women are now hostages and Lupin gives Fujiko the money, and then betrays Lupin again and arrests him. Oh, fuck this. Summarizing this episode isn't even worth it. Memorable moments include Lupin getting crucified again, this time in women's underwear, crows are involved, and he eats a crow in a moment that goes absolutely hard, and Pops gets naked, and the seedier parts of the Lupin III fan base rejoice. Which is probably also payback from when Lupin was stripped naked in prison in part 1 episode 4, One Chance for a Prison Break. That was, 12 years ago? Lupin really do be a patient man. Oh, and the machine was inspired by Shin Lupin III chapter 118, Bad Press. What even the fresh hell was this episode? It's so bloody weird. The plot goes on and my brain tries to fit the story together. I thought everything would be explained and everything in my head would fit it into place, but this is not one of those stories. It's a very unusual episode. I don't think there even is a plot. This episode was written by Saijun Suzuki. He's made films and has acted in all sorts of media and is also a screenwriter. And yes, he's one of those creators. Known for making really surreal, nonsensical movies that make you think about what you watched, rather than a simple story that anyone can follow.
Suzuki supervised Season 3 and 4 of Lupin III Part 2. He honestly didn't know that until now.
And he was given a Lupin episode to write, and boy, this was... Look, I always go into these episodes blind, to get a fresh take on the episode from beginning to end, even skipping the previews for the next episode. So with that, I wasn't expecting a plot that was supposed to not make sense on purpose. I wasn't expecting that from a Lupin the Third episode. Heck, the ending alone made me think that this was a surprise two-parter, but that's not the case. You know, for a series so far that oftentimes recycled some plots from part 2, this one tried to do something different, to play with themes of whatever it's trying to say. Though I'm not sure what this episode was trying to say. Is it supposed to be about war and how Louisa regrets what she's done to give weapons to a war that will kill hundreds of human beings? Was the possible sacrifice of Lupin meant to symbolize the crucifixion of Jesus Christ? What did the crows symbolize? And why did Lupin brutally kill one and eat raw like a real bloody man? And how much trend did Pops need to pull that cross from the ground and run away like bloomin' Roadrunner?
That wasn't even Roadrunner, you stupid pendejo.
In fact, the plot is so nonsensical that people had trouble even translating the episode's title, fan and official. I'm assuming it's supposed to be overdoing Masquerade Composition, but due to the complicated way it's titled, as in some Japanese symbols can translate to completely different words, some fan translations got play a joke on the variation, variations on getting carried away, and variations of a bad joke. Crunchyroll translated the title to a musical variation of Monkey Business, but was updated to Masquerade in Hell. Maybe the confusion was the point. I'm not sure if the title I used for this review was correct, but the fact that even the title is just as surreal to English viewers is pretty freaky. But do you know what makes sense? A manga chapter, sort of. The start of the episode where Pops chases Lupin was a direct adaptation of Shin Lupin III, chapter 115, Overdoing. The chase is exactly the same, only it's a random bloke instead of Pops, and he's out to get his diamonds back from the thief, and he'll strip Lupin of nearly everything using his glue traps. But the thief, even when stuck in fly trap paper, can still outsmart this random bloke. So, this is an episode. Ranking it is going to be difficult since I rank it based on how good the plot is, and or if the episode was fun and entertaining enough to watch in the future. So, did I enjoy the plot? I don't know. It's too surreal to enjoy the plot, too surreal to be entertaining. but I wouldn't call it a bad episode because it has some good moments, memorable moments even. Ah, fuck it. I'll rank it above Prisoner of Pollutant House and move on. Lupin steals some ransom money that was to be used to release a kidnapped rich heiress, Miss Alda. It ends up being a successful steal and meets up with a mysterious woman to take the money, but it turns out that this woman hypnotized Lupin into doing her bidding, leaving him to Pops. Lupin is framed for the crime of kidnapping the old woman and is given a death sentence. Escaping the jail cell thanks to Jigen and Goemon, he's once again a wanted man and has to figure out who did this to him. We quickly find out that it was Mrs. Alda herself who planned the kidnapping, assisted by Fujiko of course. But when Fujiko demands her pay, Mrs. Alda alters the deal. Marry her son Ron. That is all. Fujiko is forced into a relationship with this thing. I'll get to him later. This episode is okay, another one where Lupin is framed for a crime he didn't commit. Albeit he committed a crime against his will, and once again Fujiko was in on it, including getting betrayed by the antagonist, though this episode escalates the silliness up a notch. Mrs. Alda is a goofy but memorable villain, an elderly lady who can work computers, has muscle-bound guards who will do her bidding, and is okay with forced marriages. Also, this is what, the 5th time Fujiko has gotten kidnapped in this series so far? And I'm sick of hearing, Rupan, Tascote! That's like a catchphrase at this point. I swear she wasn't kidnapped that regularly in part 2. Or maybe she was, it's been a while since I watched that part. Alda offering Fujiko to her son is one thing, but the son being an absolute wimp who's been coddled by his mother is just an insult to Fujiko. Ron is bloody pathetic. Anything negative that happens and he crumbles like a crouton and immediately goes to his mother for comfort. Need I remind you that this boy is an adult male. He's the man feminists want men to be, but would have a miserable time with in a relationship. He's so pathetic, he makes me want to take some tren, go to the gym, lift weights while watching footage of Ron, and I'll be jacked and juicy as fuck in no time. I skipped the tan part because I've already accomplished that part. Anyway, we get a scene where Lupin encounters Ron for the first time and he's playing with a real life doll of Fujiko. You make your own jokes, this one's too easy. Anyway, Alda is spying on the two via security camera. It malfunctions a bit and the scene continues on. And that malfunction results in a very predictable outcome. Lupin gets arrested again and is getting the rope. And if you pay attention, you know exactly what's going to happen. You're just waiting for the outcome whilst Ron gets aggressive and sexually creepy all of a sudden. However, Fujiko's reaction to Lupin in the ropes did feel a bit genuine, because Alda did inform her that Mary and Ron would gain her a ton of money, and despite thinking about it, the moment she sees Lupin about to die, she immediately wants the thief. She really do be a complex character, isn't she? Overall, it's a decent episode with some funny moments, some cringe moments involving Ron, and a funny and sad if predictable ending. I'll rank it above Break the Big Trap. Lupin plans to steal some Persian treasure, but in order to get it, he needs to find a girl that's pure of heart. He finds one named Lori, who seems to fit the requirements. She gets trained by Jigen and Goemon in case anything goes pear-shaped. Lupin and Lori head to Jordan to find the treasure, but there's a mysterious assassin one step behind them who is hunting Lupin down for a $100,000 reward. This episode is pretty good. I like the idea of Lupin training a new member to help the thief, even if the job is temporary. Even Jigen and Goemon are proud of how skilled this young woman got. Speaking of which, Lori herself is a decent character, though not the most memorable. She's supposed to be innocent and docile, but when push comes to shove, she'll take action from the very beginning. Also, I love how Fujiko finds out about the treasure from Lupin via sleeping gas. When Lupin tells her that he needed a girl of pure heart, she gets pissed off, realizing he didn't ask her and for obvious reasons. It's a funny moment when you know what kind of woman Fujiko is. Then there's Bruce the Assassin. We get a few seconds from him from time to time in the first half. We get more info on the man on what his objective is, so you're anticipating for what might happen in the second half when we find out that Bruce is in fact a half man, half robot. Because of course. Bruce attacks Lupin for a few minutes and gets shot in the hand by Lori, falls and dies. He's supposed to be a hybrid robot, right? Did he not account for falling damage? Lori and the star of the episode are an adaptation of Shin Lupin III Chapter 6, Strange Woman and Mystery Woman. The training session is similar, but the objective is for Lori to be an assassin, killing Lupin's targets, starting with a backpacker who attempts to her, but Lori kills him with the skills she learned from Goemon. And before you ask why Lupin is endangering her for his selfish gains, don't worry. because Lupin attempts to
Non-consensual hooky cockey.
her twice. The both times she defends herself at least, and the second time hidden in the dark as an unknown attacker at first. But this was for a reason. See, Laurie has a microtape hidden in her. Many agents want it, so she has nowhere safe to go, and Lupin wants it too. So he pretends to make her an assassin so that when he did attack her, he'd locate the microtape, leading to a comedic conclusion. It's one of those chapters, it's not for everybody. And this time I mean it. As for me, I like the art. Yeah, as pervy as anime Lupin got with Laurie, at least he never went that far when compared to manga Lupin.
You son of a bitch! Why? Tell me why!
The killer comes along quietly, takes the assassin episode and spices things up, and it ends up being a good episode for it. There are some aspects I would have liked to see more of, and the Lupin vs Bruce fight could have been a bit longer, but I still liked it for what it is, and I'll give credit to the anime for the twist ending. I wasn't expecting that, so check it out, and make sure to find that James Bond reference. I'll rank it above Hello Angel from Hell. Eve's apple, a valuable art piece made of gold, is being transported via a cruise ship to New York City. Pops is hired to protect it, knowing that Lupin could be just around the corner. Well, he was right, and Lupin tries to take it, but after some cartoony shenanigans, Lupin and Jigen escape empty-handed. Lupin has to find a way to get the apple one way or another. This episode took a ton of tropes from previous Lupin material, often to the point of predictability. A cruise ship has something valuable, Pops is there to protect it, and Lupin does some silly shit to get it. Hilarity commences. In fact, it sort of reminds me of Part 1 Episode 14, The Emerald Secret. But thankfully, it made up for it by being the most fun and entertaining episode this series has had so far. I really enjoy it. You get a pirate sword fight between Lupin and Pops, and the finale involving marathon runners was the biggest highlight and a clever way to conclude Lupin's escapades for this episode. There's also this young man, Prince Adam. He's allowed the New York exhibit to display Eve's apple in their art gallery. He seems to be infatuated with Fujiko, willing to make her happy in any way she sees fit. He's also fat, and eats a lot because rich boy be eating. He's not a bad character, and he did get a deserving send-off after all he's been through. Pops is at his best here. The comedic elements involving him were so funny, and despite his often repetitive shtick, it works here. Overall, regardless of the tropes, I really like this episode a lot. It's funny, it's silly in all the right places, and for that, I'll rank it on top. Fujiko asks Lupin to steal some ingots from the ICPO, promising to marry him if successful. Lupin goes above and beyond to get the gold, even using a giant volleyball to steal said gold, resulting in a wacky chase with Pops. Lupin does indeed get the gold and give it to Fujiko, and he finally has a chance of getting married to her. And then she does what she always does, betrays him and leaves with the gold. This results in an angry Lupin finding her and through the usual manipulation tactics, cries crocodile tears to make him forgive her. But then Pops finds them thanks to one of the ingots being a tracking device, and with the power of the MSX keyboard, no seriously, take Lupin and Fujiko away and lock them up in jail. Knowing that they're about to be executed, they plead with Pops to finally get married, to which Pops allows. You idiot. This is such a borderline routine episode, taking all the tropes and basic plot points from previous episodes, even ones from part 2, resulting in yet another average episode. Even with the marriage subplot, it's just a means to fool Pops long enough to escape with the gold, and if you're a fan of Lupin, you can predict the twists and turns, from knowing that Fujiko will betray Lupin again, to knowing which character is disguised as who, especially that blooming priest, to using a tracking device. The previous episode, There is Poison in the Golden Apple, took a lot of tropes from past episodes, but at least it was written to be fun, entertaining, and slightly different enough to forgive its recycling. And it's still on top of the ranks. This episode could even do that. To give it some credit though, the ball chase was the big highlight of the episode. It's goofy enough to be entertaining, but not enough to elevate the episode. It's so below average, you're not missing much if you skip it. I'll rank it above Virgin Mary's escape strategy. Mafia boss Roulette is hosting a birthday party, and Lupin wants his riches. During said party, he meets a dancer named Jenny Walker, who dreams of being a Broadway dancer. Realizing she's meeting the world's famous thief, she wants to help him in the heist. Mostly for clout. This episode is alright, another simple plot with Lupin and a female character to tag along, another typical Lupin episode, but it's not as horribly formulaic as the previous episode Are You Really Getting Married? While I personally don't care for Jenny, her interactions with Lupin were surprisingly solid. There's some decent chemistry between the two, and it's legal as well, so that's a sigh of relief. The animation is really good here, especially in the end where Lupin and Jenny are dancing whilst avoiding gunfire, a huge highlight of the episode. In addition, the character designs look looser. We're seeing a slow change beginning from the hard, normal looking designs of characters to the more cartoonish looking designs the series is known for. We're not there yet, but we're getting close. There's a song that's used throughout the episode, and I think you know what I'm talking about if you're one of the folks who watched the episode themselves. This is Darkest Eyes by Kathy Lin. It's really strange hearing a licensed song in a Lupin series, and it was one that was new at the time, especially when it was being animated. Oh, and another one of Lin's songs would be the first ED for the anime adaptation of Cat's Eye. The more you know. So overall, another decent episode. Good animation, a simple plot that doesn't make you predict what's going to happen. You can enjoy it for what it is, as I did. I'll rank it above Hello Angel from Hell. Fujiko distracts a bunch of Mexican prisoners with her sexy dancing moves, and almost gets gang
non-consensual hokey cokey
in the process, and Jigen is just standing there because, well, it would have made sense if this was part 2. But this was done so that Lupin can break a man named Parker out of said prison. Lupin did this so he could find out the location of some lost treasure Parker hid. After an attack on a submarine, which turns out to be fake so Parker can spill the beans, the gang, minus Goemon, go to said location, leaving Fujiko with Parker. And Fujiko does what she always does, betrays Lupin and seduces Parker into giving her the real location of the treasure, to which he does. But before they go to the location, Parker reveals that he left a deadly surprise for Lupin to find. It's literally one of the episodes ever made, predictable and dull. What else can I say? I just summarized the majority of the plot, and even without spoiling the end, you know how it's going to end. Also, Pops is here. That is all. I do like that Lupin took advantage of Fujiko being a constant traitor and outsmarting everyone in the room. But it's to the point where you know how Lupin's going to outsmart the antagonist, and the surprise you constantly get from part 2 isn't there anymore. I mean, Parker reveals that he tricked Lupin into going to a minefield, and when Jigen uses his pickaxe, the mines explode, making you think they're dead, but you know they're not. Now that can work if you got a fun and engaging premise, but this episode doesn't have any of that. The finale chase was just mediocre. Not bad, but I've seen better, especially from this series. In short, it's a dull affair with the rare funny moment, but they come and go. There's nothing to come back to, you can skip this one. I'll rank it above Goemon the Peerless. Onihei Azumaya, after disappearing for a while, is to be the next president of the Federation of Economic Organizations. Meanwhile, Fujiko asks Lupin to steal a painting, but unlike most expensive paintings, the one Fujiko wants is a valueless art piece. He does so, but is still confused. He uses the back computer to get all his answers, and this is when he finds out that Mr. Azumaya, who got plastic surgery beforehand, is actually Mamo Shidayu, a conman who managed to do the one thing very few people have done, outsmart Lupin and get away with it for a long time. Many years back, Lupin was approached by this raggedy man, who tells the thief that someone stole his diamonds and pleads with him to get it back, splitting the reward 50-50. Lupin steals the diamonds, but Mamo Shidayu manages to take them from under the thief's nose, and it turns out that they were never the conman's diamonds at all. So Lupin has to prove that Azumaya really is Mamo Shidayu and get his share of the diamonds. This episode is above average, but not bad. I feel the plot would have been more interesting if Lupin didn't find the answers he was looking for so easily, and I say back computer because it could do things real computers in the 80s couldn't possibly do. I know it's a cartoon and you have to throw away your suspension of disbelief quite often, but not when the writer uses it as a crutch to get to the next scene as quickly as possible. It also has a scene with Pops talking to Azumaya, and if you watch the episode from this point, you know exactly what's going to happen. Though that moment wasn't entirely the fault of the anime, as this episode is an adaptation of Shin Lupin III Chapter 12, Who Are You? In the manga, Azumaya's first name is Kihei, not Onihei like in the anime. Most of the moments in the manga are adapted in the anime, like Lupin's encounter with Azumaya, the plot point about the diamonds, and the meeting with Pops. In the manga, Azumaya has a henchman that tries to throw out Lupin, but the thief ends up killing said henchman by snapping his neck because this is still manga Lupin. Jigen and Goemon try to get the truth out of Azumaya, but get outsmarted each time. I do prefer the manga, and whilst I give credit for the anime expanding on the plot, I somehow prefer Lupin knowing who Azumaya really is, instead of the anime writer cheating. Speaking of the anime, I did notice a couple of weird edits that made no sense. There's a scene where Lupin and Fujiko are talking in a house, then it cuts to a red car driving, then Lupin and Fujiko are still interacting in the same room, then cuts back to the red car driving again, but it's Fujiko driving said car with Lupin in the passenger seat. Then we see Lupin and Fujiko talking whilst viewing the building where the painting is located. It fades to nighttime with Lupin climbing said building, then fades back to daytime where Fujiko waves goodbye to Lupin, and then fades back to him climbing. One editing mistake is one thing, but two? And they're both obvious mistakes, and if they're not, then it's very distracting. The animation is decent enough, but then it gets unusually fast and fluid when Lupin fights Azumaya's henchman. It feels like a video game where the final boss is Azumaya himself, and of course is the highlight of the episode. This moment was inspired by the movie Game of Death, an unfinished Bruce Lee flick where the main character has to go through multiple floors of bad guys to get to the main antagonist. What else? Fujiko is still looking weirder by the minute. The location of the diamonds is at Angel Island. Now you know why I picked this background music. Yeah, that's about it. Not bad, but could have been better. I'll rank it above the gold ingot summon Lupin. Ancient artifacts have been uncovered, including walls that have mythical creatures etched onto them. One of them has a jewel on its eye. Lupin not only steals it, but also kidnaps the Chinese archaeologist Professor Yang, who can help the gang find the legendary Golden Paradise, a city buried unknown. But they also have to deal with Taizan Or, a big tycoon bloke from Singapore, who too wants whatever is found. It's a very simple plot, almost to the point where I barely wrote any notes when watching it. With that said, I enjoyed every minute of this episode. It feels by the numbers, but did a lot to keep me invested thanks to good writing, good pacing, exciting moments, and it feels like a mini adventure that doesn't bore you with its tropes. It does just enough to forgive its mishaps, and I'm fine with that. The antagonist, Taizan Or, isn't very memorable. Also, that chase at the beginning of the episode really gives me Miyazaki vibes, especially when Pops and his army of police officers chase after Lupin on the road. Other than that, there's nothing much else to say. It's a fun episode, I recommend it. I'll rank it above Overdoing Masquerade composition. Lupin and the gang infiltrate a vault containing uncut diamonds. Lupin successfully opens the vault, but as soon as he collects it, the diamonds catch fire. The gang escape and the next day find out that the one diamond Lupin did steal was a fake, and that the price of diamonds heavily increased. And of course, Lupin is blamed for this arson. It turns out that Cecil Rose is the man who planned all this so that he can sell diamonds at exuberant prices. But as always, you might outsmart Lupin, but that will only get you much attention from the thief himself, and he always gets his revenge. This episode is okay. It's another one where antagonist outsmarts Lupin, Lupin outsmarts them back, but at least it has some entertaining moments and the animation is wacky. I really like the animation here. It ain't perfect, but it does give off that energy you'd often see in a manga. The character designs look very different, even by Part 3 standards, but this has been the case for several episodes at this point. Now, if you did watch this episode, you'd probably ask the same question. Can diamonds actually burn? Short answer, yes. Long answer, diamonds are pure crystalline carbon, and like anything carbon, as long as there's oxygen in the air, it will burn and form carbon dioxide. It is strange I had to look that up, never knew that, and I assumed diamonds wouldn't burn in real life. I think it's because diamonds have this reputation of gems that are indestructible. At least that was my thought process. Well, you learn something new every day. Pops is here and gets a couple of good moments, albeit he's only 2 moments in the episode. I did like that he managed to find a device Lupin usually uses to spy on his enemies. That rarely, if ever, happens. Maybe Pops just got lucky. Can't say much about the antagonist, Cecil Rose. He's another greedy bastard. Haven't had those kinds of antagonists before. Though his assassin for hire Gagny is a bit of a loony, and his chasing with Lupin is absolutely dumb but absolutely hilarious. It just fits the character really well. So overall it's fine, at least it didn't bore me, so he gets credit for that. I'll rank it above The Ruby Sheds Bloody Tears. The Swiss bank in Beirut is the safest bank in a dangerous country, safekeeping people's money as well as cash from Arabian oil tycoons. What makes this unique is that it's not only indestructible, but also a mobile bank. Whenever there's fighting occurring, the bank will move to a safer area. In addition, it also has a computer system that can protect the vault where no one has ever set foot in, as only machines sort out the cash. For the world's greatest thief, this is a challenge worth taking, as Lupin must find a way to pull off a successful heist. This is another heist episode, but a decent one, nice and simple. Everyone does what they can to pull off this heist, from Lupin's disguises to Cheeki vacuuming up the money, to Goemon slicing up shit when he can, and Fujiko doing her best. And I mean her best. And Pops is here to try and arrest Lupin as always. It's not the first time Lupin tries to steal valuables in the middle of war-torn cities, but this one is unique as the episode is directly set in Lebanon, a country that was in a civil war even during the airing of this episode. The civil war lasted from 1975 to 1990, and like many conflicts was bloody and pointless. Anyway, if you like heist episodes, this is another one to watch. It doesn't do anything unique, but it's written well enough to not feel derivative, so I'll give it credit for that. And hey, a mobile bank that moves like a tank and can destroy smaller tanks is something I haven't seen before in a Lupin episode. In fact, a moving building could possibly be a reference to the Crimson Permanent Assurance sketch from the 1983 movie Monty Python and the Meaning of Life. In the case of this episode, I'll rank it above Fire Doesn't Suit a Diamond. Taniyama owns an ancient Chinese statue. Pops tries to warn him that Lupin is out to steal it. However, Taniyama has already prepared for this with an assassin named Sairyu, who is willing to kill Lupin to get the treasure. But it seems that Goemon knows this man, a friend from childhood who trained with him all those years back. Lupin is adamant in getting that treasure, and Goemon will have to fight Sairyu. This episode is okay, though I'm not feeling this one, which is sad because it's another Goemon-centric episode and a proper one at that, and it ends up being mediocre. I would have loved to see Goemon and Sairyu's past, what they did, what happened to them that made them go their separate ways, instead of a vague footnote before the second battle. In short, I could not care for Sairyu because I don't know much about him and his friendship with Goemon. We do find out that Sairyu was looking for the killers who murdered his family, and Taniyama will help him in that investigation should he complete the job successfully, only to find out that Taniyama was the one who did it because we need more tropes for our episode full of the usual tropes you get in a Lupin episode. The fight between Goemon and Sairyu wasn't all that bad, but I would have liked to see a bit more. Other than one silly moment between Lupin and Pops, there's nothing to come back to in this average and undercooked episode. I'll rank it above the gold ingot summon Lupin. We're in Spoonland? Spoonland isn't the country I've ever heard of. Do they speak English in Spoonland? Or Japanese? Anyway, a priest asks Lupin to steal back the dove's eggs that once belonged to the church from the Prime Minister Hatcher, who took them during the country's civil war. The reason the priest wants them back is because the children have lost their faith in God. Meanwhile, with the announcement that Lupin is going to steal the eggs, Hatcher enlists Pops to capture Lupin once again, with the promise of knighthood by the Queen if successful. This episode is really good. It's another typical heist episode, but once again, entertaining nonetheless. Lupin being guilt-tripped into stealing valuables other than himself is funny, even funnier when Lupin has to do the same to Fujiko. The plot heavily relies on its comedy, which is where the entertainment value is, as well as the heist itself. Pops is hilarious here. Highlights include the chase on the motorway where Pops is trying to beat Lupin and Goemon's score in Cluster Truck, and the inspector chasing said eggs. Hatcher isn't a memorable or threatening antagonist, no matter what Lupin says. The only notable aspect about her is that she was based on the then Prime Minister of Britain, Margaret Thatcher. So, Hatcher takes eggs from the church that the children love so much. So it seems she hates minors too, and if you're a British person who remembers the 80s, you get the joke. Wait, I just realised her name is Hatcher and she wants those eggs. You thought you were clever, weren't you, TMS? Also, here's your Buster Keaton moment. Overall, another fun heist episode. Not the best, but it's an episode I could watch again. Another recommendation. I'll rank it above Farewell Golden Legend. Now on to the final episode of Season 1. Goemon goes fishing near the Hudson River, as you do, only to reel in a skeleton. Thinking it was murdered, he blesses the bones in hopes of giving its soul some peace. That is until the ghost of the body reveals itself, a young woman named Lily, and haunts him all through the night. Meanwhile, Lupin and the rest of the gang are eyeing up a golden pinball machine, once owned by a man and his 5 daughters, now owned by Carmine Jacob, tethering it to the huge boat that holds a casino in it. Also, Pops is living in a society. It's another Goemon-centric episode and one that's actually good. Probably the best one we have so far. It took 26 episodes to get at least one. That's sad. The supernatural elements made for a very interesting premise, and once you know all the info from the golden pinball machine to the dead girl, you can put 2 and 2 together, so it intrigues you to see what had happened to the girl. Also, Lupin's back with a Dragon Slayer. Cowmine Jacob looked to be a threatening villain if my headcanon wasn't obliterated by the reveal, and he's just another rich dickhead, though his design does make him look ruthless, so I'll give the artist that. Regardless of how I feel about the reveal, it doesn't hurt the episode's appeal and I enjoyed it. This is something Goemon needed, a legit good episode involving him. Not even the likes of Sleep Deeply My Friend accomplished that. So check it out, a great end to a very lackluster season 1. I'll rank it above Showtime Smells of Death.
終わった？ルパン三世リープサンドジャック。今ロッテリアのバカとドリンクで運が良けりゃリープサンドが5個もらえちゃう。君も狙ってみないか？
Lupin, Jigen and Goemon chase a passenger plane that holds something valuable, but a couple of Soviet jet fighters ambush the plane, bombing it to oblivion. What Lupin was looking for in that plane was a ring called the Star of Alaska, which he was hoping to get for Fujigo after promising him with marriage. Again. But it turns out that the American CIA and Russia's KGB are after the ring, but not for the ring itself, but for its contents. It turns out that the ring contains a single wheat seed that was discovered in Canada. The seed is able to germinate and grow in freezing temperatures. However, the CIA didn't want anyone to know about this because they're the CIA, and tried to destroy all evidence of the seed's existence, including those who experimented on it. But an ex-CIA agent named George stole the seed and is now a fugitive. The only person who may have the Star of Alaska now is George's wife named Barbara. Now this was quite the surprise. A 2-parter I didn't expect to be a 2-parter, and it was pretty good. It's a proper action adventure with government secrets, betrayal, mostly from Fujigo, a damsel in distress, and a MacGuffin that may tip the scales in favour of one of 2 large countries. The 2-parter is a bit more serious in tone, at least for Lupin III, and it's light in comedy, but when there is, it's used suitably, especially when Pops is involved. He's a comedy magnet after all. Also, we find out that Fujigo once worked for the CIA, now working with the KGB to get the ring, even endangering Barbara to get it. Never change, you bitch! Now on one hand, well, you can't just say that and not expand on that. Fujigo was part of an agency? Now working with criminals like Lupin? That's a bloomin' eye-opener right there. Maybe that explains why she's able to withstand extremely cold temperatures in a bikini. She's just built different. But on the other hand, Fujigo previously working for the CIA doesn't really surprise me. That does explain why we don't know much about her past. Lupin, please keep your distance from her. Any betrayal she'll pull against you one day may be permanent. For the most part, it's a Jigen-centered episode, as it involves another old friend of his from his past, George Cougar, otherwise known as Lefty Joe, because he uses his left hand to shoot his pistol, and not because of, well, this joke doesn't work anymore, it's 2025 not 2023. It also gives us somewhat of another Jigen girl, Barbara, and despite being the wife of George, she's still being protected by Jigen. She's not as memorable as previous Jigen girls, but the drama involving her and George was pretty intense, questioning what the heck is going on and what does George feel about his wife. We get a new eye catcher to emphasize the new changes to this season, mostly in its character designs. I'll talk more about the second OP in episode 35, there's a reason for this. Speaking of character designs, it's going to be inconsistent and messy. The character designs can change on a dime, and both episodes being animated by 2 different studios doesn't help either. Heck, as an example, there's a big difference between Goemon getting tortured in Part 2, Episode 112, Goemon's Close Call, and Jigen getting tortured via electrocution in this 2-parter. It's wackier and funnier. An example of a moment feeling inconsistent, possibly on purpose? Who knows? Oh, and there's Lupin wearing robot armor because he can do that. It also has the number 27, as it's the 27th episode of the series. Again, tonally inconsistent sometimes. Yuzo Oki had a firm grip in how the characters were designed, but by the latter half of the first season, and onwards to season 2, the designs evolved to become more cartoony and oftentimes resemble the silly style of Kato's art, and I'm absolutely all for that. Although the female designs are going to look bizarre, and I mean really bizarre. In short, if you have a problem with inconsistent character designs in this anime, then you're shit out of luck. According to Oki, this was an intentional choice to express creativity. Let's see how well that pays off. Back to the two-parter, I love it. It's a very strong start to the second season, and a far cry from where we started. Hopefully the future episodes will be just as good, if not better. Because it really needs to at this point. It's on the season 2 ranking and on top of the overall ranking. But as always, will the next episode be any better? Lupin plans to marry Fujiko. Again. This time he plans to use a rocket to go to the moon for their honeymoon, but in order to do so, he needs to find a rocket scientist, Professor Gurlitt, and ask him to borrow his rocket. Unfortunately, he's been ambushed by some bad guys who want his rocket fuel, but before Lupin and Jigen can take action, as Goemon declined to be part of this episode, though he does later on anyway, the professor uses a cigar with rocket fuel to beat the baddies and escapes, leaving his robot friend PP to care for his castle. This is a wacky episode, but one that leaves somewhat of a mess than usual, with plot points that don't go anywhere or aren't up to snuff. The bad guys want the rocket fuel for bad things, and in their second appearance, they kidnap Fujiko and PP only to get rescued seconds later. Goemon is trying to meditate by moving a Japanese puppet with little success, only for the robot to move it, mostly by moving about, and Goemon spends a bit of the episode asking the robot the knowledge of its secrets. Yes, this is Goemon at his most brain dead, like, why? Also, this. This episode does have a similar plot to Part 2 episode 124, 1999, A Popcorn Odyssey, but that episode was much better and tightly written, as well as the wacky comedy being so much better, with that episode's resolution being funny, and this episode's resolution being mediocre. You may enjoy the episode for what it is, it's okay, but I just didn't vibe with it. Just watch Part 2 episode 124 instead. It's at the bottom of the Season 2 ranking list and ranked above Virgin Mary's escape strategy in the overall ranking. A woman walks into a bar. No, this is not the start of a joke, and is welcomed by the bartender, who happens to be Lupin. The woman's name is Sarah, and she's got issues. A dark past involving a man who murdered her father and took over his bank. That fiend is Jack Batosa. Lupin promises to help her get revenge against the man who ruined her life. But because this is Lupin III, he's expecting something for all this. But not from Sarah, but from Jack himself. This episode for me, in a word, perfection. At least almost. I'll explain in a bit. It had potential to be a great episode, a serious one that nearly sticks the landing. The first half of the episode immerses you in its atmosphere, intrigued with the unfolding plot while still keeping true to what Lupin is all about. You get a near tightly written revenge plot where you don't know what will happen next, but you know things will be okay. It feels noir inspired, its soundtrack is less bombastic and more soothing, the resolution is simply feel good. It was so close to being my favourite episode of this part. Unfortunately, by the second half, it's goofier than it's ever been, and it took me out of the immersion. I mean, are Jack's hands supposed to be that small? And what the heck is up with these facial expressions? And look at Sarah. The first time I saw her, I literally thought it was Fujiko because she looks the same, brunette hair and all. It reminds me of Part 2, Episode 69, The Woman Pops Fell in Love With, how the serious moments are juxtaposed with wacky character designs, and it took me out of the story. Oh good, we have a potential man over here. Now before I rank this episode, I need to talk a little bit about a mini manga series called Sexy Lupin III. From the 20th of June to the 22nd of August 1984, 5 chapters were released in weekly manga action. The art was drawn by Kato himself, but the stories were written by TV writers of Part 3, albeit 2 writers. The first chapter, Lonely Night Event, was written by Toshimichi Okawa, while the rest, including the one I'm talking about here, Chapter 2, Rolls Sailor, it was written by Yasushi Hirono. This chapter was published 7 months before the anime adaptation first aired. The plot remains the same, even the dialogue. The anime did add some extra elements, but most of the scenes are near one-to-one. Though because this is manga Lupin, he removes half of the woman's grief by giving her the best hokey cokey no money can buy, and compared to earlier Lupin chapters, it's a bit more graphic. Therefore I can't show you much of it. I like the chapter, but the anime adaptation's first half is better. But I'll give the chapter this: the art is stunning. Kato certainly improved a lot between Shin Lupin III and this. There's much more detail and the compositions are just as good. I never knew my favourite art style could get better than this, but here we go. Yeah, it was almost perfect, but the weak second half near enough blew it, and so I'll rank it above Let's Go to the Moon for a honeymoon, and the killer comes along quietly in the overall ranking. Lupin and the gang are in Mexico, looking to steal a painting of a young girl, but Galen also has his eyes on it, so Fujiko steals it and gives it to him. Using her seductive abilities, she convinces him to reveal his art collection worth millions, which is what Lupin wanted in the first place, as the painting Fujiko stole was bait for the more worthy art. It's an okay episode with a lot of Lupin tropes being repeated, only this time it's set in Mexico. It's difficult to talk much about this episode because I've seen the stuff it does before, from Fujiko seducing the antagonist to reveal his hidden goods, to Lupin failing to steal something the first time, only to succeed the second time, though his failed fight with a luchador bodyguard was pretty fun to watch because this is set in Mexico. Of course we needed a luchador bodyguard. As such, it's my favourite moment. Also, this man looked like he was going to break Lupin's back, and if he did, I would have died of laughter. Heck, even the way Lupin uses the Santetsuken to get the treasure is similar to the way Lupin disguised as Pops gets his crew out of a mansion in the pilot film. Oh, and I really don't like how anyone can use the Santetsuken. I mean, sure, Goemon can make it look cool and all, but isn't it a sword that you need years of training to use properly? Lupin, or anyone else for that matter, shouldn't be able to use it correctly. So this makes the sword, and Goemon for that matter, feel less unique, and Goemon being a woefully boring character in this part doesn't help matters. Galen is such a gullible antagonist, yet another rich guy with a criminal background for Fujiko to seduce. Though him looking like he was about to
non-consensual hokey cokey.
Fujiko was quite the alarm bell and would have been faithful to how the manga treats most of its female characters.
You son of a bitch! Why? Tell me why!
But of course, she's saved in the nick of time. On the bright side, the animation is getting a bit more fluid, which adds to the wacky moments. Pops is here and he gets his moment to shine as well, especially near the end. That was clever.
Froban was going to talk about something a little bit extra but due to not wanting issues with YouTube, he had to cut it from the review. The episode, whilst having some fun moments, was overall pretty midden by the numbers.
I'm ranking it above Let's Go to the Moon for a honeymoon and Are You Really Getting Married in the overall ranking. Oil tycoon John Decker hires Lupin to steal the limousine owned by the President of the United States, which at the time of the airing of this episode would have been Ronald Reagan, with the promise of $10 million. But in order to steal the car, Lupin must go to the Chase Manhattan Bank to steal the limousine's space key. However, John doesn't have good intentions, as we find out that he's putting the blame for Lupin for not paying for a burger. No, I'm serious. Robbing the bank, robbing the car, and finally, he plans to blame Lupin for the assassination of the president. It's an episode where Lupin gets duped by another rich person. Again. And the plot is what you'd expect in a Lupin episode at this point. But at least it has more good in it than bad due to the surprise twist, and the way it got revealed was really good. No way did I expect the episode swerve from a typical heist plot to an intense rescue mission of the most important figure in the world to avoid a repeat of 1963. And 1865 for that matter. In fact, Reagan was shot in 1981, almost 4 years before this episode was aired, on the same month it was aired. Imagine if this episode aired in America back then. I recommend this episode simply for the intro alone. Just watch it, it's really funny. Pops is here and we get some funny moments with him, including the scene where he finally puts Lupin behind bars, again, gets pissed, and just has a depression episode where he blames Lupin for making him leave women, and possibly that daughter he may or may not have, just to chase Lupin. But by the end, he gets a happy ending, even if it didn't involve capturing Lupin once and for all. Also, Fujiko gets a new boyfriend and dumps him as quickly as the relationship began, and when he gets depressed about it, Lupin tells him that she's a Jezebel, and then gets mad for being told the truth. While While there are better episodes, it's not reversal, reversal, and again reversal levels of dullness, and thankfully far from it. $10 Million Key is a great episode, mostly for its twist in the second half. I'll rank it above The Name of the Cocktail is Revenge and Copy Humans Are Expensive in the overall ranking. Lupin and the gang has scouted Macintosh Jewelry, a store that's home to highly expensive jewels, watches, rings, necklaces and all sorts. This is to be the thief's next target, but once they try and plan ahead, they spot Pops chasing after some crooks who have kidnapped a young boy. Lupin pays this scenario no mind when he accidentally saves the boy, all because his fishing hook latched onto the crook's bow. Lupin and the gang escape with the boy and later at night, find out that he's a massive fanboy of Lupin and his criminal escapades. This leads to Lupin spending some time with said boy and the thief accidentally teaching him the ways of sexual harassment that would become his personality by the end of the episode.
What have you done?
Quickly growing tired of the boy, Fujiko takes him with her, but plans to give him to Macintosh in exchange for some cash. However, the moment we see him, he immediately betrays her and plans to cut off the boy's hand as he has a bracelet that's more valuable than the jewelry in his store. Lupin remembers that the boy is Mikhail Kazanov, the son of an inventor who found a way to turn salt water into drinkable water. He planned to use this to help Africa get fresh, clean water, but 10 years ago he was killed, and now that knowledge is stored within the bracelet Mikhail wears. This episode is really good. It's another episode where a kid tags along with Lupin. I will say that without the boy, the plot would have been thinner than, well, water. It's another heist episode, stealing from another rich man who was up to no good, and Lupin has to outsmart him. In fact, the intro looked like it was going to be the same shit. Not a good start to an episode. But at least with the addition of the boy added a bit of spice to it. And whilst it doesn't make the episode better, it's still decent. At least the addition of Mikhail will make me remember it. Macintosh is another evil antagonist, that is all, but I will give credit to him for speedrunning betraying Fujiko. Good lad. Pops is here, and he was originally chasing someone other than Lupin, and then the thief just happened to be nearby because fate is a bitch and a half. And then he sprays white powder at a man because he still has a cold. Even Pops in the 80s needed an energy boost, if you know what I mean. Only in part 3 will Lupin point a gun at a child and still be regarded as the hero. No, I will not give you context for that. So yeah, it's a decent episode. I would have loved to see more interactions between Lupin and the boy, as his trip with him was a big highlight for me. But for what it is, it could have been so much worse. I'll rank this episode above Reversal, Reversal, and again Reversal, and Telepathy is the Signal of Love in the overall rankings.
You son of a bitch! Why? Tell me why!
Lupin is in New York looking for a hidden cash hoard belonging to the city's mafia. After asking the black community, you know, as you do, he manages to locate the stash, steal it and go back to the hideout. But upon opening the cases, he finds out that the money is nothing more than old newspapers. As revenge, the mafia puts a huge bounty on Lupin's head, resulting in the whole of New York trying to gun him down, including the police. Lupin will once again try to find and steal the real money stash before he's riddled with holes by the people of the Big Apple. This is an average at best episode, saved a bit by some very fun moments. Lupin is trying to steal mafia money that's worth, $800,000. Really? 800k? Most antagonists wipe their asses with that kind of money. Heck, this is middling even by Lupin's standards. He's stolen valuables worth more than that. He can't be that strapped for cash. So even the reward doesn't really give the viewer any investment in the heist. Fujiko has another poor, unfortunate soul to use for her own gains. That is all. Oh, and guess what? The antagonist is another greedy rich man. Can we please have a different kind of antagonist? Please. But let's talk about Pops for a moment. This poor bloke had to chase Lupin in New York, and Interpol decided to throw him in the streets with barely any money, resulting in him sleeping on the streets. Heck, he can't even afford a $5 movie ticket. Blimey, going to the movies was cheap back in the day. The fact that the ICPO is that messed up to do that to one of their employees really needs to be explored, but it won't, because Pops will grovel back to them for another chance at catching Lupin. Pops also remarks that if he arrests Lupin any early, he'll lose his job at Interpol, and is the reason why he lets the thief go all the time. Who wrote this junk? I really do hope this was translation lines being misinterpreted. because everything he just said is pure contradiction, and whilst it does fit with him thinking Lupin died later on, only for him to be alive the whole time, making Pops happy, it really doesn't make sense even by Pop standards. He should be the guy who wants to chase Lupin hoping one day he's actually successful, but we'll know he'll fail for whatever reason. To say he wants to continue the chase because he wants to keep his job in an organisation who will allow him to rest horribly in the streets just makes me uneasy. Anyway, this episode is known for one thing and one thing alone: New York trying to kill Lupin and Jigen. It's so outrageous and bonkers that a meme was made, "Average Day in New York City," implying that you're going to have a walk around in that city avoiding gunfire. Though in this day and age, the only thing you're running from are the criminals the police kind of Anyway, go on, he just wants to sleep. Manhattan Crisis, despite some fun moments, doesn't save the episode from being yet another one and done steal money from evil rich guy plot. It's getting a bit tiresome at this point, but I do hope we get something. I just want to move on before I regret yet another project. I'll rank this episode above Let's Go to the Moon for a honeymoon and Sleep Deeply My Friend in the overall ranking.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Lupin and the gang access a safe to find 5 tons of gold that they plan to steal. Upon touching it, they find out that it is a hologram and the real gold has been stolen by someone else. On the run from the police for being framed for the theft, Lupin finds out that the real culprits are John and Mary, 2 thieves who can also use disguises and illusions to grab the loot. Lupin locates them near a ski resort, but before he can confront them, Pops is on his tail chasing him through freezing temperatures that nearly kills the inspector. Lupin rescues him only for Pops to trick the thief and cuff him, entering the lone cabin in the middle of nowhere. They're welcomed by an elderly couple, and whilst Pops tries to use the telephone for backup, Lupin wants to play a game with them, for he knows who they really are, and if you paid attention, so do you. Before I give my take on the episode, I want to talk about the second OP. Now, when the start of the second season was broadcast on Japanese television, it got a brand new OP, which was a reflection of what the series would look like and what the tone was going to be from then on. However, on home releases, episodes 27 to 34 used the first OP, with this episode being the first one to use the second OP. It's unknown why this happened and why the episodes still use the first OP on home releases, but for Japanese owners, they're stuck with it. Streaming services like Crunchyroll had episodes 27 to 34 use the second OP as was originally broadcasted. It's a weird thing, I just wanted to let you know. Moving on. I can see what this episode was trying to do. It was trying to be a Hateful Eight style episode. Yes, I know that movie was released decades after this episode, I just needed an example. But you understand where I'm getting at. A group of people in a house, different scenarios happen, some shocking, some violent, and then things slowly wrap up as the story ends. Problem is, this is Lupin III, it's 22 minutes, and you can predict certain moments. This episode felt like there was more to the plot, but the pacing is so fast, you simply stop caring about what could happen next. You know everything will be okay. Oh no, Lupin got riddled with holes, he's definitely dead. He was killed by those assassins who are definitely not people Lupin know. I'm not going to count John and Mary because the viewer knows they were in disguise to begin with. I just don't care for this episode. It's painfully mediocre with a rare funny moment or two. This episode is a slight adaptation of Shin Lupin III chapter 30, One Card is Enough. It's still set in a cabin, there's an old man and an old woman, Pops arrives, gets a hot drink from the old man, Pops knows the old man is Lupin, the drink had sedatives, Lupin and Fujiko, who was the old woman in disguise, splits the house in 2 and gets the gold. Admittedly, I did get Kato vibes with this episode. The scenes in the cabin are a setup for the wacky punchline. There's a betrayal and misunderstanding, and upon finding out this was an adaptation, I now understand why. They tried to take a simple Kato plot and expand it to include more characters, add plot points to said episode, and a proper conclusion to whether or not Lupin got the gold. As such, the episode was alright, it just didn't work as it could have been, but it had a lot of potential. Maybe making it a 2-parter would have fixed it, who knows. As such, whilst it's not as bad as other episodes in this series, I simply don't vibe with it. I'll rank it above Reversal, Reversal, and again Reversal, both for the Season 2 ranking and overall ranking. Lupin and the gang steal the Eagle of Helazard from a cruise ship. It's a successful heist at first until Fujiko takes it from them, along with another poor unfortunate soul, Prince Fallon. But in a character-breaking moment, not only is she smitten over Fallon, she also wants to save his country. See, Helazard was once ruled by a king, Fallon's father. but dictator Colonel Tolfa invaded the country, killed the king, and now rules under the people of Helazard with an iron fist. Fallon believes that restoring the eagle to a goddess statue will free the people from tyranny. However, when trying to do that, Lupin tries to take the eagle back, unaware of what Fallon and Fujigo are trying to do, resulting in not only the gang retreating after being caught by Tolfa and Pops, working with the dictator to catch Lupin, but also the capture of Fallon, who is to be executed soon enough. Angry at Lupin for screwing up and for being an ignorant dick, Fujigo decides to fight back against Tolfa, with Lupin offering to help her because he wants to protect her from the potential war that could take place. This episode is somewhat interesting for a number of reasons. First and foremost, Lupin almost ruining any chance of getting rid of a dictator because he wants his treasure, and because this is Fujigo telling him this, he doesn't believe her and the country's prophecy. And I can understand why he felt that way, even if he's jeopardizing people's lives in the process. But this is Part 3 Lupin. The fact that his selfishness might get people trapped in a dictatorship hellhole and not giving a shit about it feels a bit off. I get vibes of Manga Lupin and his dangerously carefree attitude, but whilst I like Manga Lupin, Part 3 Lupin is not Manga Lupin, and neither should he be Manga Lupin. Now that I think about it, Lupin is the kind of person to waltz into a war-torn country for his own gain, innocent people be damned, though it is the rare occasion where he does save a city. It just took Fujigo to do so. Speaking of which, Fujigo! This isn't Fujigo. No way would she give a shit about this place, only riches. She feels very out of character here just for a love triangle subplot that the writer wanted to add, and it's really sloppy. We know how Fujigo works. She wants valuables, and she'll backstab anyone to get it, even if she gets backstabbed herself. In fact, in Part 2 Episode 61, The Flying Zantetsuken, she sells Goemon's sword to some rich men who uses the sword to cause unholy chaos upon two factions in a bid to make more money on the weapons the soldiers need. And she only wanted to stop the war because she felt she got the low end of the bargain on the deal. That's Fujiko! That's who she is! An absolute bitch! To make her this freedom fighter without a personal reward at stake is absolutely strange and simply isn't Fujiko. Had it been another female character, that would have worked, but not with Fujiko. Anyway, Fallon and his Gigachin is another boyfriend character for Fujiko, but at least it's important to the plot, not a bad character, he simply wants to save his country from a dictator. And then there's Pops. Good grief, he's working for a villain that's responsible for the deaths of hundreds again. You know, like the time he worked with a rich man that destroyed a literal rainforest to search for gold, as seen in Part 2 Episode 136, Revenge of the Gold Butterfly, the man would work with a reincarnation of Hitler if it meant a chance to capture Lupin. It's bloody frustrating every time, although him popping out of a fake statue to take Lupin by surprise was a great Pops moment. So okay, he gets one good moment. Just one. So what do I think of this episode? It's alright, not bad. I just don't agree with some of the choices taken in the story. Otherwise, Lupin stops a dictator and then gets cucked by Fallon in front of his friends.
I don't care what universe you're from, that's gotta hurt.
I'll rank this episode above Manhattan Crisis, both for the Season 2 ranking and overall ranking. Lupin and Jigen try to break old man Carlos out of prison as he knows the location of some gold he stole from the thief, but it turns out to be a trap as Pops informs the thief that Carlos died not too long ago. After escaping from prison, Lupin investigates the whereabouts of the gold, starting with Carlos's grandson. Well, he doesn't have a name, he's just Carlos's grandson, but even he has no idea about the whereabouts of said gold. Meanwhile, Pops meets up with a girl named Anne, who plans on killing Lupin after his thievery escapades resulted in the suicide of her parents. Pops is determined to put Lupin behind bars this time, to the point of being more competent than usual. But later on, Anne tries to shoot Lupin and so shoots her back, seemingly killing her. After Pops holds her until she passes on, he becomes enraged and decides to do the one thing he never wants to do: kill Lupin III. I was worried during the viewing of the episode. I thought it was going to be about the consequences of Lupin's thievery, then immediately realised I knew it was going to be all bullshit and I would have been disappointed. However, the plot we got was surprisingly good. It's a Pop-centric episode and one that really fits the character. The writer fully understands who Pops is, and what could happen if you push him further than normal, while staying true to the character. I wouldn't mind seeing an episode where Lupin finds out him stealing something ruined the life of someone's family who didn't deserve it. But then I realised that if this was a thing, Lupin may up and quit, so I can see why that would be a touchy subject. Carlos's grandson may or may not technically exist, as he's part of Anne's main disguise. And speaking of her, we don't know who this Anne character is. I assumed she was the real grandchild of Carlos, but that's never been confirmed. She just screwed over Lupin to prove that she could be part of the crew? And her plan almost worked if she didn't realize Lupin could have 99 problems and solve most of them in a nanosecond. My point is, you know Anne was manipulating the game, manipulating Pops to become competent, manipulating Fujiko as Carlos's grandson in disguise, etc. You know everything will go back to normal in the end. Overall, another good episode, and a good Pops episode. We haven't got many in part 3. I'll rank it above the target is at the end of a snow, and when the eagle descends in the overall ranking. We're in Copenhagen, and Goemon finds a Japanese restaurant to go and eat. However, he gets ambushed and sent to prison for cutting off the arm of the Little Mermaid statue, a crime he didn't commit. And no, he was not given the right to assault Goodman. Chief of the Copenhagen Tourist Bureau, Roman, informs Lupin that he'll release Goemon if he can locate the missing arm and return it to him. With the help of a dolphin named Letitia and a device that allows both the thief and the dolphin to talk to each other, Letitia swims into the wreckage of the Santa Maria cruise ship to find the arm. But there may be more to this whole plot, as when Lupin does retrieve the arm, he discovers something he didn't expect to find. It's a fairly good episode. It's one of the rare episodes where Lupin originally wasn't planning on stealing anything, and in the case of this episode, simply trying to get Goemon out of prison by using a rather unorthodox method of retrieving something. And the title doesn't lie, Letitia is a dolphin that really likes Lupin, to the point of wanting to marry him. It's weirdly adorable and funny, with even his friends budging Lupin to make sure he's on her good side, from retrieving the discovered arm to escaping Pops and his army of police. Heck, Letitia's also jealous of Fujiko too, based. You know, the fact that Lupin is able to talk to an animal with a device that doesn't yet exist in real life is not even the weirdest thing about the episode, is a testament to how wacky part 3 can be. It did have some predictable moments, like Roman and his secretary Wallace being the antagonist the whole time as the arm contained the heart of the mermaid, the Stone of Illusion. The moment your plea bargain to Lupin has the line, "Do it for the children," you aren't trustworthy at all. Also, Fujiko betrays Lupin, Fujiko works with antagonist betrays Fujiko, and we all wait for the inevitable. And for some reason, the antagonist uses explosives in a pack of natto to blow up the gang. Goemon does not forgive these transgressions. Overall, I like the episode. It's something a little different with some familiar tropes, and the comedy is great here, with the ending being hilarious as well. I'll rank it above The Name of the Cocktail is Revenge, and Prisoner of Balutin House in the overall ranking. 3 tons of gold are being securely stored under Pops' watch, but a group of thieves steal it using militaristic tactics, with Pops coming to the conclusion that this is not Lupin's actions despite his superiors thinking otherwise. Upon learning of this predicament, Lupin, who was originally going to steal the gold anyway, decides to steal it back. It turns out it really was a military group led by Colonel Geese, a man Jigen knew many years back. Geese wants to use the gold to create a tank and use it to build his own interpretation of the USA in Africa, along with the White House to rule in it. Wait a minute. Alright, can you just make Outer Heaven like a normal antagonist? This episode is downright silly in the best way possible, at least when you think about it. You got a military army stealing gold to mold into a tank for the dumbest of reasons, you got an assassination attempt which fails because one simply cannot kill Pops. Oh, and just like part 2 episode 98, The Day Without Pops, Lupin gets framed for it and has to clear his name by defeating the real culprits. And then you got an antagonist who in no way dresses up like a Nazi, but despite one of the soldiers doing a certain salute, they're definitely not Nazis. Oh, and said antagonist wants to make Africa a superpower. I have several questions, but the episode of course refuses to answer any of them. It's like a Metal Gear plot if Kojima got drunk when he wrote the script. Also, someone hired a furry to be a news reporter. Is this set in 1985 or 2025? Because at this point, the world is sure getting weirder by the nanosecond. Pops is at his smartest here. He investigates the scene of a crime, finds the knife, realizes that Lupin wasn't the one to steal the gold. Simply put, he knows something isn't right, but his superiors just point to Lupin because in this series, who else would steal tons of gold like that? You can't really blame them at this point. Though the funniest moment involving him has to do with the funeral director measuring Pops while in the hospital bed so he can build his coffin right despite the inspector being alive. darkly funny and very bizarre. Overall, I enjoyed the episode. It's ridiculous, but at least isn't boring, with a steady plot and a really fun chase scene. I'll rank it above Letitia Who Loved Me and Farewell Golden Legend in the overall ranking. The time to be a lottery winner is at an all-time high, as everyone has a chance to win $50 million if they have a ticket with a lucky set of numbers. Pops has his eyes on the prize, but especially Lupin. However, the thief finds out that the lottery is rigged, as the winner was already chosen beforehand by the president of the Lottery Commission, Tony Lucky No, enticing more people to buy even more lottery tickets. To get back at this bitch-ass rigger, Lupin plans to rig the lottery computer system himself in order to collect the loot, though he has to deal with a tricky security system and Pops, who is willing to protect the money not just from Lupin, but for his chance of winning. This episode is decent. I mostly enjoy it for how it looks and animation than the plot. Seriously, the art style is the epitome of fuck it. There wasn't even an attempt at straightforward character design. It's all off model and way more expressive even by Part 3 standards. Though Fujiko and many other female characters still look weird and I hate it. And seeing Fujiko's face that close up made me shudder in absolute disgust. There's a scene where Lupin is trapped in a security system where many traps have been sprung, and you can see Lupin stretch and squish his way to avoiding these traps. It's the most memorable moment in the series and a wonder to behold, and there's many more scenes like that in this episode. Also, Goemon has a second left hand in this scene. Oops. Tatsuo Yanagino was the main animator for this episode, and the wonky style was on purpose to have more fluid animation that expressed more than any other episode usually did at this point. I love it for myself for those reasons, though on the other hand, I do understand why people might be put off by this mess of an episode. It's not for everyone, plus the fact it aired in the 80s doesn't help, and no younglings, not all anime back then looked like that. It was better looking than this, trust me. But you probably won't anyway. So in short, fun animation, at least for me, okay plot, forgettable antagonist, decent episode overall, and what a prophetic episode title. I'll rank it above Reversal, Reversal, and again Reversal, and Sleep Deeply My Friend in the overall ranking. So basically, there's this manga called Lupin III. It was made by Monkey Punch, but that's not his real name. Anyway, he steals valuables, and he has a gang comprising of a hitman and a samurai and a femme fatale who sometimes betrays him. Lupin's rival is Inspector Zenigata, and he always tries to capture Lupin but fails. Oh, by the way, Lupin is also the grandson of Arsène Lupin I and... A country in the Caribbean is controlled by a dictator, until he isn't, as a coup d'etat has taken place by a revolutionary army, resulting in said dictator killing himself via poison. During this bloody fight, Lupin plans to steal said dictator's treasure. Jigen disguising himself as one Colonel Arnold is part of the plan, but during his infiltration he gets shot by a mysterious woman, and what's worse, the treasure Lupin wanted has disappeared. Whilst Jigen is tending to his wounds, he finds the woman, who's named Anita. Wait a minute, another female character in Part 3 named Anita? Whatever. She originally came from Prague and went to this place to learn ballet, but due to the invasion by the dictator, she ended up being stuck here with no parents as they went missing, and practically no one to take comfort in. She thinks that by killing one Colonel Arnold, she might be free and meet up with a mystery man who will take her home. It's another Jigen-centered episode where the gunman has to protect a woman in a war-torn country. We've seen this in Part 2, episode 129, I Saw the Kindness of a Man's Heart in Jigen. Though it's not as compelling as that episode because the series repeats plot points like it's going out of style, though I will say it's not the worst episode I've ever watched, it just feels samey in a lot of ways. The best aspect of the episode is Anita herself. Imagine going to a country to achieve your dreams, only for them to be crushed by something outside of your control, trapped in a hellhole where you could get shot because of some tyrannical bullshit, and to add salt to the wounds, due to being backstabbed by the man who was supposed to meet her, she's still trapped in said hellhole. Unlike most Jigen girls, she doesn't get a happy ending. On the bright side, Pops accidentally saving a bunch of people from getting shot that day was hilarious. Other than the ending, the plot feels like it's been done before. This has been a problem with a lot of episodes, with a few of them at least trying to spice things up wherever it worked or not, and this episode is unfortunately not one of them. Again, I recommend Part 2 episode 129 if you want a better story similar to this. I'll rank this episode above When the Eagle Descends, both for the Season 2 ranking and overall ranking. Count Bone and Lord Wave own the Rondo Insurance Company. They buy valuable goods, get insurance from other companies, and destroy those goods to get huge amounts of compensation. When Lupin and Fujiko finds out about their evil deeds, Lupin does the only thing he can do. That's right, paint himself brown, commit insurance fraud against them by planting a fake pyramid in Egypt, insure it with Bone and Wave's money, and steal said money from them. The plot sounds fun and silly, but the episode is anything but. It's yet another episode where Lupin screws over evil rich people. It's another painfully boring episode with maybe 1 or 2 decent moments. I don't have much to say. Even when writing notes, I was struggling. I couldn't get anything out of it. Sorry all, but I'm done with this episode. I'll rank it at the bottom, both for the Season 2 ranking and overall ranking. I got 8 more episodes to cover and I already want to quit. I'm already tired of part 3 at this point. I'm tired of this shit.
I can't take this shit no more.
Former actress Queen Gretchen of the Kingdom of Monaco seemingly dies in a car accident. Lupin mourns daily for her as he was a fan of her movies, with Fujiko assuming the King of Monaco killed her. This turns out to be true, as he got rid of her so he can marry a much younger woman with the promise of riches beyond her wildest dreams, including a modified diamond glass slipper to seal the deal. The new Cinderella is Julia, a young tan girl who definitely loves him for who he is, and not that he has a pool of gold he can swim in pre-DuckTales style. Lupin and Fujiko plan to steal everything the king owns and avenge the death of Queen Gretchen. This episode is good but really predictable. The moment you see Gretchen smiling as she crashes into the sea, you know she's alive. The episode made it completely obvious. Nothing wrong with the predictable episode, but this series has way too many to the point of frustration. But I'll explain it all when it's over. It's a plot about Fujiko getting revenge against someone who did someone else wrong. But unlike When the Eagle Descends, she's getting something out of it. She ain't leaving empty-handed.
I'm leaving here with something. You know what I mean? I'm from around the way. I'm leaving with something.
It still has the typical Lupin tropes like the antagonist underestimating Lupin, Jigen and Goemon leaving a job because it's unsatisfactory only to help out in the end, the antagonist showing Pops how his traps work, unknowingly in front of Lupin, trying to steal something the first time, fail, come back and succeed, screwing over a rich person. It's once again tiresome. But something about this episode didn't completely bore me. I mean, it's still a mediocre episode, and really forgettable, but at least it's still mediocre. Oh, fun fact, or not so fun fact, Queen Gretchen was based on actress Grace Kelly, who wasn't a queen in real life, but she was the Princess of Monaco. 2 years before this episode got aired, she got into a fatal car accident and died at the Monaco hospital, and Queen Gretchen would seemingly die in a car accident. Even if it was 2 years after the fact, would that still be too soon? It would be like if there was a Golgo 13 manga chapter where the titular character was directly responsible for Diana, Princess of Wales' death, and the chapter was published a few months after her death. What? Oh my god, Saito did that?! Also, Lupin upgraded his games console to the Famicom where he plays Xevious and can't even beat the gang's high scores. And what's funny about Lupin playing this particular game is that just a couple of years later, Namco, the creators of that game, would publish Lupin III Pandora's Legacy for that console. And no, I'm not reviewing that game. I don't do game reviews anymore for those new to the channel, just discovering that I did game reviews at one point. So overall it's average, but a decent episode nonetheless. I'll rank it above Reversal, Reversal, and again Reversal, and the Gold Ingot Summon Lupin in the overall ranking.
Good morning, everybody.
A jewelry trade show is taking place in New York, with valuables worth $20 million on display. Lupin, Jigen and Goemon are off to grab the loot, but things go awry when a bunch of kids claim Lupin is their real father. Jigen and Goemon find it frustrating but a little funny until they find out that they have kids of their own. So Lupin has to find a way to steal the loot whilst taking care of the kids. Meanwhile, Fujiko has a fling with McKay, a man who owns the best jewelry money can buy. So Lupin faces his toughest challenge yet: fatherhood. On one hand, the scenes involving Lupin and the gang with a bunch of kids is the funniest thing in this episode and the absolute highlight of the series so far. We know Lupin is a ladies' man. If Fujiko isn't delivering the puss on hand, he'll find it elsewhere if he was that desperate. But then again, I'm talking about manga Lupin. This is part 3 Lupin. He's not that hedonistic. Well, that we know. It's just a shame though that everything else about this episode is the same old shit. You know the kids coming from Lupin's loins is too good to be true, especially given that Jigen supposedly has a child. He's way too careful to do that. Especially Goemon, for his only love in his life is his blooming sword. But I do like the fact that even though Lupin questions how these kids came about, he still tries to be the best father he can and take care of them, even if he's still trying to perform a heist. And Pop's reaction to this was also funny, mostly out of jealousy and rage. This episode is alright. Its gimmick in the form of the children is all it has going for it. I'm gonna remember that. The fact that the episode is about Lupin potentially having children and committing to be a father for the majority of the episode is admirable, far better than previous episodes, especially from season 2. I'm gonna remember the comedy as well, especially the case scene, including the whole gang running away from Pops. So yeah, not perfect, but its gimmick saves it from being another boring episode. I'll rank it above Reversal, Reversal, and again Reversal, and break the big trap in the overall ranking. Lupin finds a safe of the late mob boss Pinkerton. The problem is, the safe is indestructible, and the only way to open it is a key hidden in the prison cell Pinkerton once resided in. Lupin isn't able to get into the cell as the prison doors are electrified until 6 AM. Fujiko steps in to help and has a new fling named Daron, and is able to slide through cell doors. Lupin and Daron team up to retrieve the key, and the mission is successful. That is, until the safe gets stolen by Carlos, the younger brother of Pinkerton, who's also a mob boss, wanting what his brother left behind and attacking the gang in the hopes of taking the key back too. This episode is painfully boring. Yet another mob boss episode, more betrayals, especially from Fujiko and Pops wanting to capture Lupin. Though the Pops Lupin chase scene was the highlight of the episode due to the animation. But it doesn't do anything unique with its premise. Once again, I have nothing much else to say about it. A lot of elements are once again repeated, and I've already forgotten this episode. I'll rank it above still the pyramid of insurance money and an act of betrayal in the overall ranking. Alright, come on. 5 more episodes to go. I'm looking forward to ending this series. Lupin steals a plane containing a box full of Hina dolls, which the Deputy Prime Minister of Japan was going to give to the US Vice President in celebration of the birth of his granddaughter. The thief stole them at the request of Fujiko, and once she has them, she betrays the gang once again and is rescued by her new partner, Barracuda. This man is the one who wanted the Hina dolls, especially one which contains a check that he can use to extort both the US and Japan, with the goal of owning both countries. Just go with it. Meanwhile, Lupin, Jigen and Goemon are stuck on a deserted island, but after finding a scrapped Japanese fighter plane, Lupin uses whatever resources he can find to rebuild the plane to escape the island. This episode is pretty good. I really enjoy Lupin and the gang building the plane. It's funny, it's creative, and it's different from what we've seen in this part for a long time. Unless you count our Papa as a thief, but you get my point. For those saying that plane couldn't fly in real life, realize that this is Lupin III, and Goemon at one point slayed a dragon from the inside. Even the subplot involving Fujiko and Barracuda was funny, as we find out that the man has 47 wives, and he plans to make Fujiko his 48th. And because this was made in Japan, the Asian wife is the more efficient one of the bunch. Man collects dolls and has a harem of wives. It's like the anime fan's dream come true. But back to that plane. Goemon's Antetsuken is used as the propeller, and with that, Lupin just turned a normal makeshift plane into a death machine. At least almost when you realise the plane continuously falls apart whilst flying. So yeah, pretty fun episode. It's been a while, hasn't it? I'll rank it above Letitia Who Loved Me and We're No Angels in the overall ranking. Also Lupin, please never make a Fujiko face again. Her face is terrifying as is. A young boy named Ken interacts with Goemon until he suddenly falls ill, with the samurai finding out that the boy has an incurable illness. It turns out Ken is the son of a painter who was murdered by the mafia. Ken's father painted a picture that holds a secret, a treasure map which marks the spot to his fortune, which is what the mafia desires. When the mafia do capture the boy, hoping to figure out how to get the secret out of the painting, Goemon is off to the rescue. but ends up being tortured until the boy speaks. It's an okay episode, yet another Mafia episode, and it's almost Goemon-centric, though it's mostly about protecting the boy from said Mafia, Lupin trying to decipher the painting, Fujiko working with the mob to get more info on them, and Pops working with the antagonist Kenpachi, because of course he bloody is. And speaking of Kenpachi, he's cartoonishly evil and it's kinda funny. Also, Goemon gets tortured again, though it never gets as graphic as the last time he was tortured in Part 2 episode 112, Goemon's Close Call. Just some whipping and a water dunk, lightweight shit in comparison. So yeah, it's alright, I could watch it again, but not anytime soon. I'll rank it above Let's Go to the Moon for a Honeymoon, both for the Season 2 ranking and overall ranking.
Let's get some pussy to—
No! Lupin steals a 100 carat blue diamond known as Hades' Tear from a Hades statue. Lupin finds out it's a fake, but before he can do anything about it, he ends up being captured by the KL Foundation of Kingsland, who hire Lupin by force to smuggle the tear back to Kingsland. Tagging along is Maria to help Lupin with this mission. This episode is alright, and at least something a bit different. It has this espionage aspect to the episode, lots of backstabbing, secrets revealed, and the antagonist has plans he didn't tell Lupin. Maria is a character, but she has some kind of charm to her, though not enough to make her memorable. But I'll say this, because of how the story was structured, it was less predictable than most Part 3 episodes. I mean, it wasn't that hard to do, was it? And at one point, Lupin gets tortured via whip. Oh, so when Goemon is tortured, it's dark and fucked up, but when Lupin gets tortured, it's goofy and silly and reuses animation frames. I hope that doesn't mean the budget is running on fumes at this point, but overall it's fine, better than I expected it to be. I'll rank it above Reversal, Reversal, and again Reversal, and the target is at the end of the snow in the overall ranking. There you go, there's the meme. Moving on. We're in Mexico and Madame Tequila is in possession of a black diamond known as the Black Pig of Mexico. Pops tries to assist in capturing Lupin to the annoyance of Tequila. Lupin tries to get into the house, but Pops always puts a stop to it. On the thief's third try, he's successful, and after some silly shenanigans goes off with the diamond. Being surprised with the inspector's actions in trying to capture Lupin, Tequila wants to adopt Pops into the family, and she will get what she wants despite Pops saying no. Lupin and Jigen eventually go back to the mansion after realizing the diamond they stole was a fake. Turns out that Tequila deliberately wanted Lupin to steal the fake so she can collect $10 billion out of her insurance policy. This episode was really fun, but really weird. I just realized this is yet another insurance fraud episode. There's been a few of those in the latter half of season 2, and I'm not sure why the last quarter of the series was obsessed with that plotline. But I'll say this, it's the best of those episodes thanks to the wacky scenarios that at least make it entertaining to watch. Lupin trying many gadgets like a jetpack and a mole digger felt like something you'd find in a Looney Tunes cartoon, and given the style and tone of this series it fits. But a simple tractor and rocket launcher being a solution made for a great punchline. The adoption subplot is weird but funny in the case of Pops. Madame Tequila is a strange character for wanting to adopt a police officer, weirdly obsessed with that too. I wouldn't be surprised if she had mafia ties, but I'm glad she doesn't because I'm sick of mafia plotlines. She tries to entice Pops with fame, fortune, some pussy on the side, but he doesn't care for any of that. He just wants Lupin. This man's life is dedicated to capturing the thief. He is that dedicated to his job and it ends up being really hilarious. Oh, and Goemon and Fujiko are nowhere to be seen. It's just Lupin and Jigen. Then we get another Lupin/Pops chase with references to Cagliostro. Can't escape it, can I? Overall, it's a legit great episode I could watch again. Been a while, hasn't it? Highly recommended. I'll rank it above Our Papa is a Thief and A Boy Genius Plays a Dangerous Game in the overall ranking. And that would have been the final episode. See, if you paid attention to a little detail I always add, you ever noticed the Japanese air dates? Let me explain. The first 5 episodes were running weekly, with episode 5 Goemon the Peerless airing on the 7th of April 1984, and then episode 6 Lupin Has Come with a Tank airs on the 19th of May 1984, airing over a month later. There's episodes throughout the series that are delayed for a couple of weeks, or even a couple of months, but why is that? Baseball! I'm not kidding. Yomiuri Television put more emphasis on showing baseball matches or other certain events, and any normal TV programming would constantly be delayed. In fact, episode 18, Showtime Smells of Death, was completed in June, but due to the baseball matches it was delayed, airing in November instead. And despite all this kerfuffle, the series was still popular. In fact, the series was only going to have 26 episodes, but was extended to 52. Then the baseball shenanigans happened and we got 50 instead. The Day When Pops was adopted aired on September 1985, with the actual final episode airing on Christmas Day of 1985. It must have been a frustrating mess to deal with the network, but whatever. It was done and dusted, and as for me, it's time to finish this once and for all. I started this project on the 19th of June 2023 and finished this series on the 2nd of July. Well shit, that was fast. The benefit of watching 50 episodes instead of 155. Yes, this began and was gonna be released in 2023. Well, it's time to cover the final episode of Lupin III Part 3. Lupin and Jigen steal the Soviet Union's brand new atomic submarine, the Ivanov. Lupin is not stealing it as he claims, but borrowing it to collect some sunken treasure in the Bermuda Triangle. Fujiko has plans of her own when she plans to sell the submarine to the highest bidder, and many agencies from different countries offer her multiple deals, but keep on fighting each other so one of them can get it. Eventually, it's Russia's KGB and America's CIA once again duking it out to see which agency gets the submarine, with Fujiko choosing the CIA because they're prepared to give her millions of dollars for it. Considering all the episodes in part 3 that were of lackluster quality, I was worried that the final episode would be a letdown, but ever so thankfully it does end on a high note, and when I mean high note, I mean it ends, and at this point that's good enough for me. It's also one of the silliest episodes ever made. I mean, you got Lupin stealing an atomic submarine to find some gold, multiple agencies screwing themselves over for a chance to have a powerful weapon in what some may call political satire, with the KGB depicted as cold and ruthless, and the CIA depicted as goofy lunatics. Is this an American joke I'm too British to understand? It's great fun all around. Everyone has their time to shine for the last time, from Fujiko trying to make dirty deals with any agency that can survive near her, to Pops being tethered to said Fujiko and being confused with the whole situation, and Goemon once again being a deus ex machina he was born to be. It's dumb fun and it fits with part 3 as a whole when it doesn't suck. The animation is the messiest it's ever been. They went fuck it mode and had some fun. It was the final episode. The animators deserve not to give a shit and I loved every minute of it. Still hate the female character faces though.
Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
Also is the final episode. So here, have some censored tits. Here, have Lupin piloting a mech. Here, have Pops never giving up, even when he's drowning underwater. Overall, I like this episode. A great finale to... I'll explain in a bit. I'll rank this final episode above A Boy Genius Plays a Dangerous Game and Fire Doesn't Sue a Diamond in the overall ranking. Yeah, let's get this over and done with, from bottom to top, from worst to best, etc. Still the pyramid of insurance money, Goemon the Peerless, an act of betrayal, a toast to the con game, Virgin Mary's escape strategy, let's go to the moon for a honeymoon, one straight picture, are you really getting married? Reversal, reversal, and again reversal. The target is at the end of a snow, Hades' tear, the gold ingot summon Lupin, farewell Cinderella, sleep deeply my friend, great free-for-all by one piece of treasure, Manhattan Crisis, when the eagle descends, a night under martial law, Pops gets very angry, the man who erased his past, hidden treasure smells of a conspiracy, break the big trap. Our papa is a thief. Do you like the abduction game? Telepathy is the signal of love. A boy genius plays a dangerous game. The day when Pops was adopted. The ruby sheds bloody tears. Fire doesn't suit a diamond. Orders to destroy the atomic submarine Ivanov. Beirut mobile bank robbery operation. Human copies are expensive. $10 million key. Prisoner of Balutin House. Letitia who loved me. Overdoing masquerade composition. Farewell Golden Legend. The goal to my rival. We're no angels. My wings are scrap. Hello Angel from Hell. Showtime smells of death. A ghost in New York. The killer comes along quietly. The name of the cocktail is revenge. Lupin has come with a tank. The man called Shinigami Garb. There is poison in the golden apple. And finally, code name is Star of Alaska, and the Star of Alaska is a ticket to hell. After watching all of part 3, what do I think of it overall? I can understand why this series is the black sheep of the franchise, but for me, not for the reasons you might think if you paid attention for all this time. For the positives, the art style and animation that people don't tend to like about the part is what I enjoy about part 3, as well as its vibrant colour scheme. I'm not big on Lupin's pink jacket, though I'm fine with Jigen's blue suit and orange shirt. Goemon is Goemon, and Fujiko follows 80s fashion styles as expected. But I most particularly love the style of the latter half of the series. It looks wonky but in a charming way. The only criticism I have for the character designs in the latter half are some of the female characters. Admittedly, some aren't too bad looking, but that depends on the animation studio, but they can oftentimes look downright weird. But despite my criticisms over the episodes, I'll actually give the designs a pass, as they still do fit the wacky art style the anime was going for, and it certainly was a surprise move in an anime even back then. And now for my biggest issue with the series, the plots and storytelling. Simply put, it's part 2, but it's set in the 80s and it's a little more mature when it feels like it. Part 3 takes plot points from many episodes of part 2, and whilst that's not a bad thing, some episodes take said plot points and even tropes from part 2 episodes, and at least do something unique with the premise, and if they can't do that, make up for it with good writing, funny moments and clever elements. But sadly, most episodes are not like that. Season 1 at the very least wasn't all that bad, but still a tad mediocre, but even they were decent watches at best. But that becomes a massive problem by Season 2, as despite said season having some good episodes, and my favourite episode is from that season alone, the quality of the rest of the plots get more mediocre as time goes on. In fact, that's the key word to summarise most of Part 3. Mediocre. And for the most part, painfully so. Repeating plot points include mob episodes, tricking rich people, character-centric episodes, etc. They just have too many flaws to be as good as even the most mediocre Part 2 episodes, at least to me. Again, these plots wouldn't be a problem, but there's too many of them, and most of them don't do anything different to remember them. Even when I was watching all 155 episodes of Part 2, there was going to be some mediocre episodes here and there. But I knew there would be some good episodes just around the corner. Even if some were not the best they could have been, at least there was going to be episodes that were unique enough to enjoy watching again in the future. As I said in my Part 2 ranking video, that series was experimental, a cooking pot where new things were tried, some succeeded, some failed, but even at its worst, at least there was an attempt to be good somewhere. And even episodes that repeated some plot lines or two, most of the time they did something unique with the status quo, and they could still be classics regardless. That's how great Part 2 was, and why in the Lupin fanbase it's still loved by said fans. But in Part 3 you oftentimes get mediocrity after mediocrity in a row, and be surprised when there's at least a decent episode. The weird thing is, when Part 2 episodes were bad, they were really bad. But Part 3 surprisingly doesn't have bad episodes. They're just painfully boring, and a painfully boring episode is worse than a bad episode. All I see as a series trying to be Part 2 in terms of plot, but at least trying to be mature in some elements like tone, sexual scenes and characters, but it doesn't always work as Part 3 is tonally inconsistent, and if it isn't inconsistent, it oftentimes plays it safe. Even its unique ideas are mostly sandwiched between the same guff you see all the time. In terms of the really good episodes, there's only but several or more when compared to the tons of really good ones from Part 2. The rest are either rarely great, fairly good, mediocre, or really boring to sit through. The music was once again composed by Yuji Ono, and it's sadly not one of my favourites. It's not that it's bad, there are some good tracks and all, but it's just not as memorable or timeless as Part 2's soundtrack. To summarise, it's jazz, but it's less emphasised thanks to the addition of synth. Not all tracks are like that, but the most notable ones are the case. Then again, 80s music tend to be more contemporary, and the tracks prove it so. In fact, the only tracks I like in the episodes whenever they play and the most memorable that I can hum to this day is the Zenigata theme and its variants. It's catchy, memorable, and has a somewhat subtle military vibe to it, in addition to being full of sorrow, which fits the character, his ongoing chase never ending, never giving up, no matter how depressingly low the stakes are in his favour. Part 3's OP is not the usual Lupin theme we know and love, but a completely different piece. Sexy Adventure, composed by Yuji Ono, and performed by Yosuke Nakamura. It's as 80s can get, and perfectly fits the overall series. Sure, it ain't the Lupin theme, but I still love it. Another catchy piece. Even the variants are really good. My favourite tracks in Part 3 is the OP and Pops' theme. Well, there's always other soundtracks in future Lupin stuff to look forward to, I guess. So overall, Part 3 is high on style, but its substance is just not good enough. There are some great episodes I could watch any time, they're well written and memorable, but it's not enough to save this series from its mediocrity. So, I'm sadly one of those people who don't like Part 3, at least when it comes to the storytelling. I still appreciate Part 1 and 2 for what they've done in that department, but I will always appreciate the look of Part 3's art style, especially the character designs. That's the only thing I find appealing in Part 3. And that was it for Lupin TV series from that point on, because throughout the rest of the 80s, 90s and 2000s, the thief would be relegated to feature films and TV specials, as well as an OVA or few. And that's it! I did it! I finally ranked the first 3 parts, and I actually got the video made! I'm no longer haunted by this bloody video. I'll post an update on the future of this channel in due time, but that's it for me in this video. Do the YouTube things if you feel like it, and I'll see you later.